tell, do you see the road? I'm out to my soul into the sides whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect. Do it. All of that green together, the truth, yeah. Tell you the
Hello everyone, welcome back to Cypherfics. We are happy to have you back with us again in part 5 of What If dannyphantom Meets the Proud Family. Also make sure to check out the wonderful author Pokemon Fan 1991 on FANFICTIONnet. Well, also make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe and also press the bell icon so that you never miss a great update. Well, let's continue with the story now.
Danny morphed his body around the downward slash before firing a blast that sent the mogre flying back, crashing into a dozen of his buddies. If I had $1 for every one of you sushi samurai whose butts I've kicked, I'd have more money in the bank than Sam's family. Nearby, Penny punched a mogre sending it back, then leaping up and kicking another mogre in the side. Why are you doing witty banter with these things? She asked. They can't do anything but write back. Danny shrugged, leaping back and dodging a strike. He landed beside his girlfriend, force of habit, I guess, he said, throwing a blast at more and more mogres. The good news was they were easy to beat, ridiculously easy to beat. The box ghost could beat a mogre blindfolded with both hands tied behind his back. The bad news was that like all minions, the villains who fought the various Power Rangers that populated California used they were like the Hydra in Greek mythology. You took one down, and two more took its place. Danny fired blast after blast taking out more and more mogres around them. He could hear Humanosaur roaring as he plowed through attacks. He heard Buzz and Sam's fireballs fists crashing against mogres and the sound of blasters ringing through the air over and over. But with every mogre the good guys beat, there were much more ready and waiting to take their place. The mogres around Danny and Penny all at once impaled their swords into the ground. It began to glow, and something began to soak into Danny's boots. Danny hissed in pain. It felt like he got hit by one of Ember's fireballs. He grabbed Penny bridal style floating up into the air, landing on a building. The heck is that stuff? Danny asked. That would be the Senzu River, Danny heard Professor Paradox explain as the Time Walker flashed onto the roof. Well, to be completely accurate, it's one of 7 Senzu rivers. Oh, that explained why it hurt so much. Wait, did he say 7? Danny looked around La Soledad. There were 6 other spots where Senzu River water was starting to flow, and wherever one water current met another, they glowed with even more power, making the buildings glow with red power. Hold up, did you say 7? Penny asked, and who are you anyway? Ah, forgive me, we've never met in your world, Professor Paradox at your service, Professor Paradox said politely, and I did indeed say 7, one from the native worlds of these dark clones unwilling genetic donors and the other from your native Earth 20. Terrific, Danny thought, realizing the layers of Vlad's plan distract him by kidnapping Penny while using Nylox to keep the local heroes busy while somehow making portals to other worlds to bring the Senzu River here. He's gotta be using some kind of machine to do it, Danny figured. Luke, Tucker, someone else with incredible skills with technology that I haven't seen yet. Anyone finds a weird machine, smash it, and the bad guys will get weaker, Danny shouted as loud as possible. Not that we'll allow you to do that, Phantom, a Nylock that looked like a mix between a wolf and a chameleon said, leaping onto the roof, his body glowing bright red from the 7 times power boost. I wouldn't advise shouting your plans where everyone can hear him. He held his hands out, his fingers turning into sword-like claws. Not that there will be the next time, he snarled, running at Danny. Now die. Snarling, the Nylock leaped at Danny and Penny, its sword-like claws ready to rip and tear flesh. Danny grabbed Penny, leaping away from the spot on the roof where they had been standing was torn apart by the Nylock's claws like tissue paper. The Nylock looked up at Danny and snarled. The power of the Senzu River multiplied 7-fold, he said, his claws rattling together, his fang teeth spread into a monstrous smile. With it, I could defeat Plasmius and take his throne, he said aloud, grinning, but first I'm going to turn you and your girlfriend to dust. The Nylock opened his mouth. A ball of red energy began to gather in between his jaws, getting bigger and bigger before he could fire it. Etrigan pounced down, snapping the Nylock's jaws shut before throwing the Fear Dream face-first into the roof. Danny then watched as Etrigan picked the Nylock up by the jaw, looking him in the eye. Danny could see that the Nylock's eyes were wide-eyed with fear. In your final hour, see who truly has the power, Etrigan rhymed, throwing the Nylock high into the air before unleashing a massive torrent of fire from his hands, incinerating the Nylock. Before Danny could open his mouth to thank Etrigan, he snarled and leaped off in search of other opponents. Man, I'm glad he's on our side, Danny said. Danny saw explosions in another part of the base and heard blaster fire grabbing Penny. So they flew off in that direction. Throughout the base, Mogur's ankle-deep marched through Senzu River water which had now flooded all of La Soledad, all of them heading towards one part of the base. A group of Mogurs looked up at them. Pulling out bows, they fired red bolt after red bolt. Danny swerved and dodged, making sure to protect Penny as best as he could. More and more Mogres kept firing at them, and their shots were getting closer and closer. Danny gritted his teeth as a shot hit him in the back. Danny began to fall. Danny managed to straighten out just enough to turn his back, crashing on a roof, sliding against the roof, hurting his back more than it already was. "Danny," Penny said, worried. Getting out of his arms, she tried to help him up. Mogres were climbing the roof heading straight towards them. Danny had to keep her safe. He had to pull out the cosmic compass. He cycled through the coordinates until he got to the first place it was used in Earth 20. Danny in Penny's home universe. "I love you, Penny," Danny told her, hopefully not for the last time. Activating the compass, he pushed her through the portal, closing it behind him. Just as the Mogres got onto the roof, Danny pushed himself onto his feet, rushing at the Mogres. He punched and kicked at the fish-faced freaks, firing a massive wave of energy from every ire of his body, sending them flying off the roof. Danny panted. That had taken a lot out of him, and after every fight he's been in, there wasn't much left in the tank, to begin with. But he'd have to make do. If Vlad kept combining the Senzu rivers, his army would be unstoppable. Danny took off flying around what had been the mess hall. At one point, there was a defensive line on the roof, mostly of that brown-haired girl holding back the Mogres, but for every Mogre they beat, a dozen more took their place. Danny landed between Sam and Buzz, who were shooting fireballs into the crowd. "Nice of you to drop by," Buzz said, flinging fireballs down at the Mogre lines. "Sorry, had to drop my girlfriend off," Danny quipped. "Her parents are going to kill me for keeping her out this late." "Now's not the time for jokes," one clone of the brown-haired girl said before turning back to shoot at a Mogre that got too close. "Sorry, I do witty banter when I'm nervous and because it's fun," Danny explained, looking at Sam. "Please tell me we have a plan." "We've got one flash. You ran around the entire base. They pinpointed where the machine is," Sam answered before shooting a streak of fire, hitting a line of Mogre archers, frying them like burgers on the grill. "Wait, there was a him. Who was the flash?" "That's good," Danny said. "Where is it? I'll smash it." "No offense, cuz, but you stick out like a sore thumb." "So we've got the stealthier versions of you heading towards the machine," Buzz said, "with the tech-savvy guys." Danny nodded. He supposed it made sense to stay here to be the bait while the stealth team destroyed the Doomsday Machine. It sounded like something out of a spy movie. And it seemed like the easier part of the plan right now. All they had to do was not touch the Senzu River and shoot at Nilox like they were fish in a barrel. Wait, what were they doing? Down below, all of the Mogres were beginning to glow, morphing into red good that collected and merged before they reformed into giant Mogres. "You know, I'm glad Tyrannodrones can't do that," the Green Ranger said. "This night just keeps getting weirder and weirder," Danny, dressed as the Flash, said, "and it was pretty weird, to begin with." "This could be a problem," Ben said. All at once, the Mogres drew their sword and swung down. "Get clear," Gwen shouted. Danny and everyone on the roof with ghost powers worked together to make a shield while Gwen used her powers to make a platform underneath their feet, the building collapsing beneath their feet. Seeing that their targets hadn't taken a dip into the Senzu River, they brought their swords up and swung down again against Danny's shield. "Man, I'm really glad Tyrannodrones can't do that," Ranger said around them. The shield shook. "You said that already, dude," Luna said. The shield around them shook. "It's worth repeating." The Mogres brought their swords up to swing down again. "Yeah, I'm not waiting for them to do that again," Ben said, tapping his Omnitrix and transforming into Big Chill. Then, turning intangible, he flew out of the shield towards one of the giant Mogres' faces. Taking a deep breath, he breathed out a massive cloud of ice that froze the Mogre's face. The fish face stumbled back, crashing back first into a building. "Time to run," Flash Danny said, his eyes glowing with green electricity. He ran through the shield, a green blur that ran up a Mogre's arm. In a blink of an eye, another Mogre was beaten, its sword knocked away, and it was sent toppling back. Danny saw Flash him leaping through the air towards the last one, fist sparking with green lightning. "I'd say that were cool if I had any idea how he did that," Danny thought, watching the speedster version of him throw a punch. There was a massive thunderclap, and the last giant Mogre was sent stumbling back before he exploded. It would have been a pretty epic moment if Flash Danny didn't begin plummeting towards the ground. "Wait, can he not fly?" Buzz asked with wide eyes. "Probably not," Sam answered. "Oh crud, that wasn't good." Danny was about to drop the shield and rescue him when Ben beat him to it, catching him by the armpits. "Thanks for the save," Flash Danny said. "No prob," Ben said before they landed on the roof. The good news is the giant Mogres were gone, and no one noticed the stealth team was going for wherever Vlad's machine was. The bad news was there was a high breed plummeting towards them, Danny thought. "Wait, what?" Danny didn't even have time to react before the hybrid crashed through the shield and knocked aside Ranger Danny and Kevin. The alien looked at Danny with a stern look in his eyes. "I should have destroyed you back on Earth, Fenton," the hybrid said with a voice that sounded like his being said through a voice filter. Danny growled, "Rook." Danny and the others surrounded the possessed alien warlord. "Congratulations, you're not as moronic as I had initially assumed," Rook said. "Still, you're a fool to think you can beat me. You know, ordinarily I feel bad hitting someone who's being overshadowed," Danny quipped, throwing a punch at Rook, hitting the overshadowed warlord in the face, "but you're the exception." Rook laughed darkly, swatting Danny away like he was a fly, sending him flying back. "Was that supposed to hurt?" he laughed, his body glowing red. He sent a wave of energy flying forward that crashed into Ranger Danny, Sam, Henry Danny, and Ben. Ron rushed at Rook, tackling him around the waist and picking him up. He threw him, Kim, then leaped off of Ron's shoulder, aiming a kick at the alien's head. A force field pushed out of Rook's body, stopping Kim's kick. He then grabbed Kim, throwing her into Ron. Kitty Fenton flew up, firing alternating blasts of green and blue from finger guns at Rook. He brought his arm up to block while Kevin, with his body covered in steel, rushed at Rook with clones of Luna acting as backup. Kevin swung his arms out of Rook's attack, throwing him off balance. Then Luna's clones leaped on his chest, knocking him to the ground. "Wait a minute, didn't I kill you already?" Rook asked, "or was the one I dropped out of a window an identical triplet?" "Not even close," the two Lunas said before unleashing a sonic scream from their mouths. Rook hissed in pain, throwing off the two clones. Danny looked to Kitty Fenton. "You ever go through evil PBRTY?" he asked, referencing the time Danny went to the future and met him. "Unfortunately," Kitty answered. "Why do you want to know?" Kitty's eyebrows widened in realization, catching on to what he meant. "Oh, I get it." Danny groaned, getting up. "I'll help too." The three of them together unleashed their ghostly wails in tandem on Rook. Ben transformed into Echo, and the original Luna joined in, combining their sonic waves with the half-ghosts. Rook was pushed down onto all fours, his claws digging into the floor. Rook's actual body began to be forced out of the hybrid. Ranger Danny looked toward Henry and Buzz. "Can you guys do that?" he asked. "It would have come in handy against Vilgax if I could," Buzz answered while Henry simply shook his head. Rook growled, pushing, forcing himself back into his host body and then slamming his hands against the ground, creating another energy wave. It hit the combined ghostly sonic wave, creating an explosion that drove everyone back. Rook was breathing heavily. "You've only delayed the inevitable. Soon, our endgame will be at hand," Rook said, disappearing. While Danny and the others were fighting with Rook, Tucker, Luke, Black Cat, Possible Danny and Archer Danny were sneaking through the command center in the middle of La Soledad. Outside, red lightning flashed across the sky, and puddles of Senzu River water leaked through the floor. The team of 5 had to be careful not to step in one of the puddles as they moved through the base to not step in the demonic water. "Are you sure it's here?" Black Cat asked. Luke nodded. "According to my calculations, given the points of origin for the Senzu rivers forming a circle, this building in the epicenter of said circle, along with Vlad's traits of narcissistic personality disorder, the base's command center would be the ideal place to set up the machine," he telepathically explained while drawing a circle in the dust on the floor. "And no one from this Earth noticed?" Ninja Danny asked. "Vlad has a speedster on his payroll," Tucker pointed out. "He could have put the machine together before you could blink." Ninja Danny seemed understandably uncomfortable at fighting someone that fast. "Is it wrong that I'm hoping speedsters don't exist back on my Earth?" Team Possible Danny and Black Cat shook their heads. "They're not all bad," he said. "But no, can't blame you for not wanting to fight one dude," Team Possible Danny said. The 5 continued to move, with Tucker at the back moving slowly, holding onto his side, something the others noticed. Still, they weren't bringing up, "Are you sure you're all right, Tucker?" Luke asked telepathically, directing the question solely to Tucker. "No one would think less of you if you had stayed back." "I would," Tucker signed back. Luke sighed, not bringing up his concerns again, though they were still there. Reaching the general's office, they saw 2 Mogres flanking the door. Ninja Danny reached into his pocket, pulling out a handful of black marbles and throwing them at the Mogres' feet. They exploded, filling the hallway with pitch-black smoke. The Mogres drew their swords, looking around the smoke for any sign of an attacking enemy. From the darkness, a pair of glowing green eyes appeared before leaping out of the smoke was Black Cat, raking his claws across the Mogres' throats, the feared demons disappearing in red smoke as the smoke cleared with Black Cat standing in front of the door. Team Possible Danny stepped towards the door, putting his finger against the lock. His body glowed purple. He shrank down, landing in the lock, running through to the other side, leaping down, growing, landing quietly, turning around. He unlocked the door, letting everyone else in. There, in the middle of the room, was a machine that looked like a large centrifuge holding vials of Senzu River water spinning in a circle in the machine. An aura of yellow energy surrounded the machine. "Okay, we found the machine," Ninja Danny said, pulling out an arrow with a firecracker wrapped around the below the arrowhead. "Let's blow it up." "I got this," Black Cat said, holding a hand. Black energy filled his palm. "Just watch the door and make sure no one else comes." Before Black Cat could move towards the machine, there was a flash of red light before he was thrown towards a wall. The others turned to see Tiger grinning with a hand out, traces of red light lingering on his hand. "Sorry, but we can't let you do that." Black Cat pushed himself up, pulling out his bow staff. "So you're my clone," he said. "Clearly, my sense of style isn't genetic cause you do not look good in tiger stripes." Tiger smirked with a flick of his wrist. Red energy appeared around Black Cat's neck, tightening like a noose. Black Cat gasped and choked, dropping his staff and falling to his knees while Tiger smirked, tightening his hold on Black Cat's throat. "Let's agree to disagree, but the dead don't get an opinion." Luke transformed quickly, rushing at high speeds and throwing a punch at Tiger's chest. A shockwave flew from the impact, destroying the wall behind Tiger. Fragments of tile rained down, but Tiger didn't move. He didn't even flinch. "How?" Luke asked, shocked before Tiger hit him with a punch that sent him flying back. Team Possible Danny leaped up, catching Luke while Archer Danny drew an arrow, but before he could fire, an arrow flew through the air, cutting his bowstring and hitting Archer Danny in the eye. Then, while he dropped his bow and his hand reached up for his eye, another arrow fired, this one turning into two nets of red energy, catching him along with Luke and Team Possible Danny, binding the three together. Archer stepped out of the shadows, and with a snap of his fingers, red electricity surged from the net, electrocuting the three into unconsciousness. Tucker reached for a ghost blaster, but Archer zipped across the room with a grin on his face, grabbing the blaster out of his hand and crushing it. "I'm glad my assassin failed," he said, grabbing Tucker by the neck and holding him in the air, "because now I can do this personally." Archer hit Tucker with a palm strike to the chest, sending him flying into the wall with a sickening crack. He slumped over, barely conscious. Archer frowned, seeing Tucker was still breathing. Turning his hand into a puma's paw, the claws glowing with an aura of red energy, a murderous look on his face. "From Hades' heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last spit at thee, Tucker Foley." Before Archer could bring his claws down and kill Tucker, he, along with Ninja Danny, Luke, Black Cat, and Team Possible Danny, disappeared in a flash of blue light. "No, I had him. I finally had him," Archer shouted in rage, looking to Tiger. "How did they rescue that weakling from my claws?" Tiger shrugged, indifferent to Archer's grudge against Tucker. "It doesn't matter. The machine has finally begun charging," Tiger said, looking at the machine. "The end is now." Archer grinned to Tiger before they vanished in red light, a earring in the pocket dimension that their father had been using to observe the final steps of his plan for ultimate power. They appeared behind their father. Archer took notice of Vladimir, Ranger, and Rook, but he saw no sign of Goliath. Archer paid it no mind, though, for now. He and his brothers would work together to crush Fenton and the meager forces of Earth-74 before destroying each other. Perhaps Goliath was waiting in the shadows for them to destroy each other, or perhaps he was already dead. For now, it didn't matter. Archer notched one of the ectoranium arrowheads and aimed at his father's skull, an instant death with no chance of a counterattack. It was more than Vlad deserved. Before he could unhook his fingers from the bowstring, his body stiffened. He couldn't move. His muscles were like statues, and the breath froze in his lungs. All he could hear was his heart beating reassuringly in his chest from his peripheral vision. Archer could see his brothers were frozen in their strikes. Ranger and Vladimir are holding blades made of some sort of red gem. Tiger had a cataclysm ready to use, and Rook was simply frozen stiff, all of them surrounding Vlad, their death blows frozen in place. Vlad tapped his gauntlet. "I'm disappointed in you boys," Vlad said, looking at the, "Truly, I am. I expected you to make your assassination attempt almost an hour ago." What does he know? How could he possibly have known this was coming? Was it Goliath? Vlad tapped his gauntlet. Holographic screens appeared, showing some sort of footage. Archer didn't recognize most of it, but he did recognize one screen where he'd robbed that museum of ectoranium from his point of view. "See, when I created you six, I implanted nanites into your bloodstream specifically coded to your genetic signatures. So I saw your every move, and I heard your every conversation. I knew your every plan, your every scheme." Vlad looked to Vladimir. "I'm the most disappointed in you, Vladimir." Archer could see the speedster struggled in vain to move an inch. "You impressed me the most. Ensuring the death of Goliath without placing yourself in harm's way was well done." Vlad made a tisk sound as he turned away. "You were my favorite son. I even considering not using you for the plan." Wait, what did that mean? Pods rose around Archer and the others. Then, with a push of the button, Archer was forced to drop his weapons, his arms against his sides like he was wrapped in invisible ropes. You see, the Senzu River's power increase was just one part of the plan with it. My powers are increased 50-fold, but with your abilities integrated into my genetics, Vlad explained as he stepped into a pod, the lid closing behind him. My powers will be 100 times more powerful. With that power, I could crush Pariah Dark with a hand behind my back, force Thanatos and this Mr. Hyde to kneel before me, and conquer not just Earth 20, but the entire universe will be my empire, Vlad said with a joyous grin. It's just a shame none of you children will be around to see it, he said, pushing a button as yellow lights lit up in the pod and a machine began to activate. And then Archer knew nothing. This was getting really repetitive. Danny thought about shooting another Mogre. Danny wiped the sweat from his forehead, and tiring beside him, Sam shot out a stream of fire, sending a wave of Mogres flying back, but for every one they took down, 2 more took their place. Honestly, the whole thing was off. Yeah, the Mogres were tough with the power boost, but still, they hadn't won yet against a bunch of teenagers. Did Vlad and his clone kids really think they could conquer the world with this bunch of buff fish-faced creeps cause they were losing to a bunch of teenagers not even out of high school? A team of adult superheroes like the Justice League or the Avengers would probably have won by now. What the heck was Vlad's plan? You okay, Danny? Danny asked. Yeah, it was still weird that a version of Danny somehow became one of the Justice League's heavy hitters. I'm fine, Dan, Flash, sorry, this is a little weird. Danny shrugged, no offense taken, I've dealt with weird since I got struck by lightning and got these powers, he said, laughing, especially when the legends call for help. Above their head, thunder rumbled, and the Mogres stopped marching. Instead, they dropped down onto one knee. I've got a bad feeling about this, Ben said while Gwen put a hand against her temple, gritting her teeth. You okay? Kevin asked. Gwen shook her head. Something is coming, something unnatural. Lightning flashed across the clouds collecting into a single point before striking down on the rooftop behind them. The lightning took shape before their eyes. It looked like a Power Ranger wearing a white costume with black lightning bolts running up his arms and legs on his chest was. Now Danny wasn't fluent in Japanese, but he picked up some things over the months from Luke, so he knew that word meant fear. Combined with the stupid cape on his shoulders, the red lens, and the arrogant posture, Danny didn't need to be a rocket scientist to know who was in the Ranger costume. No offense Vlad, but the Power Ranger doesn't look good on you, Danny quipped at Vlad, and the others surrounded him, all looking ready for a fight. Vlad laughed, red lightning sparking across his body, and black energy surrounded his hands. On the contrary, little badger, I pull off this look quite well, Vlad explained, zipping forward faster than Danny could see, hitting him with a punch that made Danny feel like his insides were on fire. It felt worse than the accident that gave him his ghost powers. Danny was sent sliding back, holding onto his chest. Vlad looked at his fist, shaking his head disappointedly. Impressive, little badger, you're still alive. It seems I haven't completely controlled these powers yet. Sam growled, lighting her hands on fire and sending a wave of fire at Vlad. Flash did the same thing with lightning from the other side. Before Vlad could try to run away, Gwen tried to use her powers to hold on to his ankles. But it turned to dust when Gwen's mana made contact with Vlad. Gwen recoiled in pain and disgust. Vlad held up his hands. The fire and lightning stopped before being redirected back at Sam and Flash, sending them flying back. Kevin, Ron, Kitty, Ben as Humongosaur and Kim charged at Vlad, who laughed. Too easy, he said mockingly, his arm growing, fur claws growing out of the paw where his hand used to be. He spun in a circle, unleashing a wave of purple energy that sent everyone who charged at him flying back. Clones of Luna caught them before they could end up falling over the edge into the Senzu River and the legions of Mogres. Ranger Danny pulled a blaster off his belt and began to fire while the original Luna, backed up by dozens of her clones, let loose a sonic scream. Vlad held up a hand, easily deflecting the blasts, batting them away like he was shooing away a fly. He then fired a beam of glowing red energy from his visor that vaporized the Luna clones. He then levitated the actual Luna by the neck, making her choke and gasp for air. Odd, I'm getting the strangest sense of déjà vu, Vlad commented. Haven't I already killed you? Luna said nothing while Vlad shrugged. I'll just have to be more direct, Vlad said, drawing a sword, Fear Blade. With a sharp tug, Vlad pulled Luna towards Vlad and his waiting sword. Danny rushed forward, knocking Luna out of the way and throwing a punch. Red lightning surrounded Vlad as he sped around Danny's punch, grabbing him by the face and pushing forward, sending Danny colliding back first with the ground. Danny and Ranger Danny rushed to help. Danny threw a punch at the back of Vlad's head while Ranger Danny swung with his punch. Vlad shrunk down their attacks, passing through the air where he'd once been, and they hit each other. Vlad grew back to his normal size, flying above them. "Come now, surely you all can do better than that," he mocked, watching as everyone got up back onto their feet. Flash Danny got to his feet, green lightning surrounding his body. "This doesn't make sense. How does he have so many different powers?" "It's because he's mixing magics," Gwen said. "The speed force, the morphing grid, nylock magic, ectonorite biology, and then there were the other powers." Danny had a pretty good idea where he'd gotten those other powers. He must have done something to his last batch of evil clones and turned them into a power-up for himself. That was bad. That was really bad. Vlad was already ridiculously overpowered, but now he was practically unstoppable, Danny thought before remembering what Katie had mentioned about mixing magic. "No offense, Danny, but your Fruit Loop is crazier than mine," Kitty told him. "All those different powers can't be stable." The Ron is going to regret asking, "But what happens when those powers destabilize?" Ron asked. "Best case scenario," Gwen answered solemnly, "North America is vaporized." Okay, if that was the best case scenario, Danny didn't want to know the worst case. "And the worst case scenario?" Henry asked. "Who knows how far the explosion will spread, especially with those portals open to other Senzu rivers," Gwen said. "That was beyond bad. If they didn't stop Vlad, countless people would be annihilated in a flash. So it had to stop here, and now the good news was at least his deal with Roker meant all he had to do was beat Vlad, and then he'd go from powerful to powerless. Now how the heck was he going to do it?" Before he could come up with an answer, Flash zipped forward, running down the building into the Mogers, sending them flying. Then, he began running in a circle around Vlad, creating a whirlpool filled with green lightning, trapping Vlad. Danny used his ice powers to freeze the vortex with help from Ben as Big Chill Flash stopped running after a while. Then, standing on the water, Vlad stood trapped frozen in a chunk of red water. "Very impressive, Flash," Vlad said mockingly from behind. Flash, before he could move, Vlad grabbed him from behind and threw him, sending him flying through multiple buildings. Before anyone could think to go and help Flash, Vlad appeared in front of them. Now, don't you know it's rude to interrupt a private conversation?" Vlad mocked, stomping the ground and sending everyone to the floor, gravity pushing down on them like Jupiter, the planet, not the sailor, was pressing down on their backs. Soon the other Vlad came back with an unconscious Danny hanging limply by the neck in his arm. His costume was shredded, and his cowl was gone, showing his beaten face. Vlad dropped him unceremoniously to the ground. Vlad threw him to the ground. "Now, do you truly understand just who and what you're up against?" Vlad mocked, "But I'm not wholly without heart as a show of good sportsmanship. So I'll give you all one last chance to join me and serve in my army of fear as we conquer the multiverse, or one by one, I will destroy you all." Danny grit his teeth. Even with all this pressure on his back, he'd never join with Vlad. Any of them would ever do that. "I'll join," Henry said, surprising Danny. "Henry," Danny said, shocked. "Brother," Buzz said, looking betrayed. Vlad waved his hand, and Henry stood up slowly, rubbing his shoulder. My Henry, this is a surprise, my boy. I thought the little badger had completely indoctrinated you and his naive mentality of using your powers for good." Vlad mocked the same way he had the first time Danny had fought him. Henry looked at Danny for a second. "I'm not as selfless as he is, I care only about one other person," Henry said, stepping forward, dropping down, and kneeling to the Fruit Loop. Oh, that sight made Danny want to puke. "Promise to keep her safe, father, and I'll do whatever you want." Danny raised an eyebrow briefly when Henry called Vlad's father. His cousin had flinched. He was lying. "Of course, my son," Vlad promised, stepping in front of Henry and patting him on the head like he was a dog. "Now any other takers? No, just one of you is willing to join the winning side. No, just Henry, a pity, but one Prince of Fear is more than enough, at least for now." While Vlad was monologuing, Henry stood up with his hand behind his back and began to glow with energy, aiming at Vlad's head. He threw the punch. And faster than anyone could react, Henry's arm just below the elbow was on the ground, disintegrating into dust thanks to Vlad's black cat powers. Henry fell to his knees, screaming in pain. "Excellent try, son, but next time you want to lie, work on hiding your body language," Vlad mocked, kicking Henry in the chest and pinning him to the ground. "Did you really think that would work?" Henry didn't say anything. He just smiled. Vlad looked behind him to see Etrigan charge at him, swinging a massive sword. Vlad brought up his own to block, but he was still sent flying back. Etrigan grinned behind them. Everyone was trying to back to their feet. "The pressure lifting took you long enough," Luna snarked. "I like to make an entrance," Etrigan said, leaping across the rooftops towards Vlad. Meanwhile, Danny, Buzz, Sam, and Danny rushed to Henry's side. Henry looked at them with a pained smile back in his human form. "Hi. Are you crazy? Why would you do that? Buzz demanded to his brother, tears in his eyes looking at where Henry's arm had been. He could have killed you. Henry shrugged, maybe, but you guys were in trouble. I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. You are definitely Danny's brother, Sam said, trying her best not to cry. On the other hand, Danny was crying quietly, unable to say anything. Danny, on the other hand, was angry. He was just so angry at everything Vlad had done, every petty scheme, every attempt on his dad's life, or when he'd tried to hurt Jazz or Sam or Penny or who knows how many other people in the 20-something years Vlad's had his ghost powers. But no more. Danny wasn't going to let Vlad Masters and his schemes hurt one more person. Not one more. Danny flew across the way to where Etrigan and Vlad clashed with their swords. Every swing, every collision sent shockwaves through the air. Though are truly a fool to mix magics as you have, Etrigan warned while their swords collided, you will be undone by what you considered just a tool. Oh, spare me the moral drivel, Etrigan, Vlad mocked, leaping away, firing blast after blast from his hand. Finally, Etrigan spun his sword in a circle above his head, creating a shield of fire that Vlad's attacks couldn't get through. Okay, seriously, where was this guy earlier when Vlad was kicking their butts? Etrigan threw his arms forward. The shield of fire became a massive beam that flew toward Vlad. Vlad held his hand out. The flames turned purple before they changed course, vaporizing a legion of his mogres. Vlad rushed forward, throwing a punch at Etrigan's face. Etrigan brought his arm up to block while his face was covered. Vlad leaped into the air, hooking his leg through the air. He grew to his giant size. The kick landed. The building underneath the two fighters was completely demolished. Vlad shrunk down, floating in midair, seeing no sign of Etrigan, and it seems that is that. Out of the dust and the rubble, Etrigan leaped out, punching Vlad in the face, cracking his helmet, and sending him flying back. Not quite. This demon has hardly begun to fight. Etrigan landed kneeling on a circle of fire. Standing up, Vlad rose. Black lightning surged across his body. Vlad grit his teeth in pain. Etrigan frowned. Already it has begun to forsake your power, or this will be your last day beneath the sun. Vlad, clearly in denial and probably mad with power, shook his head. You're quite strong, Etrigan, but I wonder if you're fast enough to save your little friends. Holding out his hand, black energy of destruction filled his hands. How does it go again? Or right, Cataclysm. Vlad fired his attack, aiming where the others were. Most of them were still unconscious, thanks to Vlad's earlier attacks. Danny knew he had to stop it somehow, but Etrigan literally beat him to the punch. Then, leaping between the others, the beam hitting Etrigan in the chest, he fell back, landing in front of Kim and Gwen. Etrigan, Kim gasped. Etrigan gasped, and so it ends. My race is run, Etrigan said. His body began to turn to dust. I regret nothing, he continued. More and more of his body turned to dust until only it was just his head. It was fun. Etrigan completely turned to dust. In the middle of the pile was Tim's unconscious. Danny turned to Vlad, who, after his last attack, more and more black lightning was surging off his body, and his suit began to glow. Danny had a bad feeling in his chest that Etrigan was right and the Fruit Loop was becoming increasingly unstable. But that didn't mean he could beat him. Even unstable Vlad was 100 times more powerful than he was. Power. Danny had completely forgotten about the phantom morpher his dad had sent him. Danny wasn't an expert on Power Rangers, but hopefully, it worked, giving him enough power to stop Vlad. Vlad laughed. My, someone's afraid, Vlad mocked. Is the great hero going to step in now that your last chance is gone? Are you going to trap me in your moronic thermos? Danny frowned at the reminder of Etrigan being destroyed, but he wasn't going to let Vlad get under his nerves any more than he already had. Last I checked, he was winning, Danny quipped before he got serious. Look, Vlad, you've got to give up. All the power you have before it literally destroys you, and who knows what else. Vlad's answer was to punch him in the stomach and send him flying through the sky. Danny frowned as he held tight onto the phantom key. He really hoped this worked. Phantom Force, Danny called, outputting the key into the morpher. Going ghost, Danny shouted, turning the key. A red glow spread from his arm across his body, becoming a costume like his usual costume, but red with a golden belt with a DP belt buckle, a red helmet on his face with a black visor over his eyes and nose. Immediately Danny felt the boost from the morphing grid connecting him to every hero on Earth, 74 every person who wanted to do right to help people. It was making him stronger. He also felt Vlad the Cheesehead was like the ectofiltration back home in the lab, full to the brink with more power than his body could actually handle from all different sources, and with every second that went by, becoming more unstable. Until kaboom. Danny had to stop that before that happened. Roker, you'd better hold up your end of the deal, Danny muttered before rushing forward, making a sonic boom. Fire, Vlad commanded. All the Mogurs looked up and began to shoot at Danny. No way was he getting shot out of the sky, Danny thought, his body glowing red as he tapped his belt buckle. Phantom deflector, he called out. Blasts bounced off as he flew at Vlad, throwing a punch Vlad blocked with his sword, creating a shockwave that wiped out his army of Mogurs. Great, one less thing to clean up, Danny thought happily. Ducking under a slash, he punched Vlad in the chest. Vlad shrugged off the punch and hit him with a giant fist. Danny blocked, crossing his arms in front of his face just in the nick of time as he was sent flying back through the air. Danny straightened out and fired blasts from his hand. Lightning surged across Vlad's body as he flew faster than the eye could see. Lucky for Danny, he didn't need his eyes while tapping into the morphing grid. Danny's fist glowed, and he punched Vlad, knocking him off guard. Vlad snarled, turning his arms into animal legs. He swung his claws, creating shockwaves of toxic red energy flying at him. Danny barrel rolled around the attacks, but before he could, a counterattack ready, Vlad fired another beam from his visor. Danny created a shield deflecting the beam. Vlad laughed before his laughs turned into screams of pain, and he began to change and transform before Danny's eyes. He grew larger. His costume turned into scales, his neck grew like a dinosaur, his head turned into a big cat, and wings shot out from his back. Vlad roared, swinging his new tail, hitting Danny and sending him flying. Vlad roared, turning to the sky. He breathed out a beam of energy that split the clouds. Lightning flashed across his monster body as Vlad flew at him, opening his mouth wide. Danny quickly got out of the way before he ended up getting eaten. Monster, Vlad roared. Lightning sparked off his body, nearly hitting Danny. The monster, formerly known as Fruit Loop, roared, attacking a building and smashing it to pieces. The good news was Vlad's new monster form made him act like a giant animal. The bad news was he's becoming more and more unstable. Danny fired blast after blast at Vlad, but nothing seemed to get through his new scales, aiming for a softer target. Finally, he fired another blast, hitting him in the eye, getting Vlad's attention. The monster roared, trying to hit him with his claws or tail wildly, but every time Danny tried to get closer, lightning surged off Vlad's body, nearly frying him. There had to be some way to stop Vlad because his body began to glow. The ground shook, and storm clouds rumbled. Vlad's eyes were completely blank. Oh crud, the Fruit Loop was going to blow. Only one thing left, Danny said, using his ranger form last resort. Phantom saber, he cried out as a gray, and a red sword appeared in his hand. Danny only had one shot at this, he thought. Then, holding the sword up high above his head, the sword began to glow. Full power fire, Danny shouted, swinging down with all his energy, hitting Vlad. Vlad roared, energy surging out of his body before a white flash completely blinded Danny for a second. When he could see again, everything seemed normal. Senzu rivers were gone, the sky was clear, his friends were relatively safe, and Danny looked. In the middle of a crater was Vlad. Danny couldn't sense any energy coming off of him. No Nylock, no speed force, no magic, no nothing. Pleasure doing business with ya, Danny heard Roker's voice in his head, but when he looked around, there was no sign of him. Danny landed, powering down. He looked at the unconscious Vlad. Checkmate cheesehead, Danny said, tired before he fell back, passing out. After the battle, Ben and his team surrounded the high-breed general, which wasn't overshadowed and captured by them. We'll wait until a plumber ship gets here to take him away for questioning, Ben said. A few hours later, Danny finally woke up and saw all of his other universe counterparts waiting for him to wake up after the battle with Vlad. Danny smiled that the battle with the crazy Fruit Loop was over. How long was I out? Danny asked them. You were out for 5 days, Tucker said. What? Danny was shocked that he was out for that long. I'm just kidding. It was just for 4 hours, Tucker joked. Danny glared at Tucker for making that joke again. Haha, very funny, Tucker. Danny saw Henry and went over to him after he lost an arm so he could protect Alex. Hey there, Henry, Deadpool said to the clone of Danny. What are you doing here, Deadpool? Danny asked him. Well, I have to send that Fruit Loop to get punishment and heal your arm, Henry, Deadpool answered. Heal me? Henry asked. Deadpool revealed a green stone in his hand, and Henry's body glowed green. Suddenly the ash began to form, and then the ash turned into his lost arm. Surprising, the two Fenton that Deadpool was able to get back Henry's arm after Vlad destroyed it. How did you do this, Deadpool? Henry asked the merc with the mouth. Well, I used the time stone from this universe to reverse the damage from what that crazed up Fruit Loop did to you, Deadpool explained. Wow, thanks, Deadpool, Henry said to the merc with the mouth. No problems, Henry, Deadpool left with Vlad on his shoulders. Danny said his thanks to his counterpart for the help in defeating Vlad and saving Penny. After that, Danny's counterparts and Kitty Fenton returned to their universes, then Danny and his friends returned to theirs. A few hours later, Danny from Earth 74 woke up, and he was at the Loud House. "Luna?" Danny asked. "Hey, Danny, how you're doing?" Luna said as she smiled at the alien boy. "Are you alright, Luna?" Danny asked. "I'm alright, Danny," Luna told him. "I'm glad you're alright, and thank you for trying to save me from my clone," Danny thanks her. "No problem, mate. I'm just trying to protect my sister, man." As she said that, Lenny Loud, Danny's girlfriend, came into the room. "Oh my gosh, Danny, are you okay?" Lenny asked. "I'm alright, Lenny. There is nothing to worry about," Danny told her. "I was like so totally scared that you were hurt after Luna said you were taken away about what she said was a clone," Lenny said. Danny put his hand on Lenny's cheek and told her everything would be alright now. This calmed her down, and the two looked at each other, then they kissed on the lips. "I'll leave you two lovebirds alone." Luna left as Lenny and Danny began kissing more passionately. Danny dropped down on the Proud family's porch feeling a little nervous. Penny would not be too happy with him after he had pushed her through the portal during the last battle with Vlad and his army. After he was back to 100%, Danny had learned everything that had happened while he'd been gone, with Tucker getting attacked by Cree Lincoln, the kid hitting a blind date who turns out was some kind of assassin. The fact that Tucker, after getting the stuffing kicked out of him by an assassin and still showed up to fight Vlad, was a reminder to Danny of just how great a friend Tucker was. The Prouds, having stayed at Fenton Works the whole time and judging by all the noise downstairs, they were still here. Professor Paradox had told him what happened on the other Earth. Flash was recovering. Apparently, Vlad had siphoned the speed out of him to boost his powers even more. Danny had offered to go and help fight crime until he was back on his feet, but the professor had assured him his speed would come back in an hour, and his girlfriend, that World Supergirl, was patrolling Central City. Ninja Danny, the version of him wearing mission clothes like Ron and Black Cat, was fine after Professor Paradox rescued them and Tucker. On Earth 74, the war was over. People with the High Breeds invasion was no longer secret, the plumbers were arrested, and the members of Ben's team who Vlad had attacked were all awake and out of the hospital. Just in time for Etrigan's funeral. Danny frowned momentarily, thinking about Etrigan disintegrating just like Henry's arm had. Maybe he could have done something to save him. If he had just been fast enough, maybe Etrigan would still be around. Speaking from my own experience, it's never good to dwell on what ifs, Professor Paradox had told him. It rarely ends well. Danny just nodded. Professor Paradox smiled, enough dwelling on the past, focus on the here and now. Professor Paradox said his goodbyes and then disappeared, and Danny headed downstairs. He saw Suga Mama sleeping on the couch with Puff in her lap. The TV was on playing the news in the kitchen. He saw his mom and Mrs. Proud feeding Bibi and Cece, sitting in high chairs while his dads were drinking coffee and talking about something. "You use my snacks for what?" Mr. Proud asked. "Pest control is better than any bait on the market and cheaper than extermination. The bugs eat the snack and drop dead. I'll tell ya, Oscar, you make a lousy snack but a great pesticide." Mr. Proud seemed to be thinking about that, but before he could say anything, Bibi and Cece noticed him. "Danny, Danny," they said, waving and laughing at him. Danny waved back, smiling at his girlfriend's twin siblings. Danny, his parents and his girlfriend's parents happily exclaimed before Danny knew what had happened. His parents hugged him tight. "We were so worried about you, young man," his mom said. "Worried and proud," his dad added, "but seriously, don't travel to parts unknown in the multiverse without telling us first." "Mom, Dad, I can't breathe," Danny choked out his parents as his parents finally let him go. Mr. and Mrs. Proud walked over to him. "Danny, thank you very much for what you did," Mrs. Proud said, elbowing her husband, who may or may not still be thinking about that pesticide idea his dad had given him. "I really doubt that's going to sell any better than the snacks." "Yeah, Danny, thank you for saving our daughter," Mr. Proud was quick to add. Speaking of. Danny looked behind him to see Penny was behind him and she looked ticked. "Penny, look, I dash. You pushed me through a portal," she interrupted. "I know. I was worried you would get hurt after you left. So many things happened. Buildings were destroyed, Henry had his arm cut off, and Etrigan got vaporized. I know that. Do you think I wasn't worried about you when Sam and Buzz carried you unconsciously to your bed? The only reason I was by your side all night." "It's true she was," his dad chimed. "Only reason she wasn't there when you woke up was cause we put her one of in the guest room." Penny got closer into his space. "Look, Danny, I knew what I was signing up for when I started dating a superhero, and so do Mina and Alex," she said, not knowing that they were also superheroes. Well, a superhero and a spy. Danny wasn't going to say anything. Either way, it wasn't his business. "So please promise you won't go pushing me away to try and keep me safe." Danny was silent for a second before he nodded. I'll always keep you safe, but I promise I won't push you through a portal again. Penny rolled her eyes. That's probably the best I'm going to get, isn't it? Before Danny could answer, Penny grabbed him by the collar, pulling him in for a kiss. Danny quickly returned it, wrapping his arms around her waist while she put hers around his shoulders, pulling him in close. In a different universe, where cities are in ruins, the streets are broken up, was a boy with spiky black hair and flashing blue eyes. His attire consisted of a blue shirt with yellow linings around the sleeves and collar and old worn-out jeans, and around his neck was a hardly noticeable blue necklace. He rode on the back of a giant wolf-like creature with blue fur on his back and head and white fur under his stomach and around his mouth. On its front paws were gloves, razor-sharp claws, and a red scarf wrapped over its neck. Currently, the boy and his dog-like partner were running from a monster with the head of a dragon, the body of a snake, the arms of a demon, the wings of bats, and the scales of a lizard. But, he seemed set on something the two held. And he felt that he would get it soon, for both of his foes was panting and tired. Give me the boy's light energy, Jaegerman, or I'll kill you. So the misshaped monster bellowed down to the wolf-like creature or Jaegerman. Virusmon, I'll never give my MSTR's light energy. Not in a million years. Jaegerman shouted up at Virusmon, who didn't seem at all threatened. If you want it that way, Virusmon turned to his followers, the Bakemon, destroy Jaegerman and grab the boy. Failure is not an option. The 5 ghost-like Digimon saluted and began to carry out their orders. As the Bakemon charged at the beast Digimon, Jaegerman stood, ready to take any attack that the Bakemon threw at would not let his partner down, not now. Zombie Claw. The Bakemon outstretched their undead hands to slash the blue beast, but Jaegerman dodged every move they made at him. You can do better than that. Jaegerman boomed. Spiral Blow. Jaegerman shot out a tornado from his mouth, getting the Bakemon caught in it and blown to bits. Great job, Jaegerman. The boy smiled and patted his Digimon on the back. If you have to do something, do it yourself, Virusmon muttered, charging at Jaegerman with full speed. Virus Flame. Virusmon shot a green flame from its dragon-like mouth, hitting Jaegerman directly. Jaegerman howled and stood on his 2 hind legs, resulting in the boy falling off his back. Now die. Virus Flame. Once more, Virusmon charged his attack up again. Crying, the boy took a small red device and held it tight. DG Modify. Omega Booster Activate. The red device glows brightly. In the blink of an eye, Jaegerman's gloves became metal, included with a giant booster. The wolf-like Digimon used the booster to dodge Virusmon's attack and to pull his MSTR out of the way while he was at it. Virusmon made an uncouth attempt to catch him, but Jaegerman was moving twice as fast, so it was nearly impossible. And before Virusmon could stop them, they were already out onto the horizon. Curse them and their Omega Booster. If it weren't for that, I would have the light energy, and all the world would have trembled before me, Virusmon swore, cursing the day Modify system was invented. Sir, one of the Bakemon put a tracking device on Jaegerman's right paw, so now we can locate where their base is, said the Bakemon, silently grieving over his lost friends. Oh, so all you Bakemon failed to kill Jaegerman to put a tracking device on him? Virusmon seemed agitated with the Bakemon. Sir, yes, sir. I will give you something. The monster-like leader grinned slyly, then slammed his demon-like claw onto the Bakemon, immediately turning him into data. That was for not speaking out your plan, Bakemon, he said bitterly at the already dead Digimon. Now that I have the location of where the boy and his partner are, it's time to take what is rightfully mine. So Virusmon broke free from the ground and began to fly where the boy and Jaegerman were located. Off in a vacant warehouse in a seemingly empty town, Jaegerman and the boy came down the driveway and up to a garage door. It seemed to be working, so Jaegerman's partner pressed a button on the garage lock to get in. As they walked in, Jaegerman de-digivolved into a smaller version of Jaegerman that stood on 2 feet, his ears were floppy, and now he wore boxing gloves. Dad, we're back. Then, as if he were expecting them, a man that looked like he was in his later 40s emerged out of the shadows. He wore a white lab coat, an orange jumpsuit, black shoes, and a pair of blue goggles. Hello there, Danny boy, his father gave them a warm smile. So, you kept the light energy safe from Virusman's hand? He asked Danny, who nodded. Yes, but it wasn't that easy. He answered. If he gets his claws on you, the whole universe will fall to its knees. His father raised his arms as if to exaggerate, but he really wasn't. Yeah, that would be really, really bad about the whole universe falling into the claws of Virusmon. Danny nearly deadpanned after hearing this almost 1,000 times before. So, what are you working on now? Danny pointed at a strange machine that had an arch-like shape with a diamond jewel on top of it. Danny thought it shined like a rainbow, spinning around and around like a top. On the side was a panel where the control keys were to make it work. "This, my boy, is a universal portal machine," the professor said with pride. Danny looked with amazement, and he couldn't believe it was a universal portal machine. "Why would you build a universal portal machine, and why gave that name?" Danny inquired. His father was always working on something new, and every machine had a mission. Well, before he could tell him, Virusmon busted the roof, causing debris to come crashing down on their head. Gaomon punched the rocks into smaller forms before they had the chance to come crashing down on his MSTR and his father. "I have finally found you, holder of the light energy." Virusmon beamed, firing off his virus flame at the professor, Danny, and Gaomon. All of them rolled out of the way of his attack, nearly killing them. Virus flame, once again, he fired off his attack and hit Gaomon. "Gaomon, no!" Danny yelled out, running to Gaomon's side to see if he was alright. Gaomon tried to stand up but felt the pain from Virusmon's attack. "Give me the light energy, or I will kill your partner, Gaomon." Virusmon threatened. "No, no. No. No." Danny screamed in terror, and then, all of a sudden, his body glowed white, and his Digivice transferred the glow to Gaomon. After that, Gaomon started to glow so bright that Virusmon dropped him. Then, the form of Gaomon began to grow. "He's digivolling!" Danny exclaimed. Gaomon warped Digivol to Mirage Jaegamon. "I don't care what form you are in, I'm going to kill you." Virus Flame, once more, he shot out flames in his demon hands, but Mirage Jaegamon repelled the flame with a Gale Claw. "Now it's my turn." The newly evolved Mega level cried out. "Full Moon Blaster Maximum Power." Mirage Jaegamon's chest plate opened and fired out a yellow beam, deleting Virusmon in one attack. "That's the way, Mirage Jaegamon." Danny cheered proudly to his Digimon. But before they had too much time to celebrate, something was floating in the air, and it was Virusmon's data and it was coming back. But this time, he had legs, sharp spikes around his knees, elbow, and wrist, and 2 long black horns on his head. He digivoled. Danny's jaw practically hit the floor. "I will never die." Mega Virus Claw. Virusmon created a giant shock wave with his claws, causing Mirage Jaegamon to de-digivolve back into Gaomon and crash into Danny's arms. "You did your best, Gaomon." Danny tried to soothe the dog-like boxer in his arms. Then, Virusmon did another Mega Virus Claw, sending Drake and Gaomon flying to where the time machine was at. "I'll save you, boys!" his father shouted while he began to push random buttons and pull a lever. Then, the machine part started to move, and Danny and Gaomon were gone in bright white light. "Be safe," his father silently whispered, but the newly evolved enemy caught his attention. "What did you do to the holder of light energy, old man?" Virusmon yelled. "I sent them to another universe." The professor pressed a red button with a skull and crossbones picture, sending the machine into flames. "No! This can't be!" Virusmon's roar roamed the entire world, sending chills up every spine that heard it. Luke felt as if the entire Casper High marching band was performing at full volume in his head, rattling his skull as he blearily woke. As his vision became clear, he took in his unfamiliar surroundings that were certainly not his bedroom or even the Fenton Works laboratory. He was sitting upright in a chair. Before he was a long table and a veritable feast of food that would certainly have Danielle and Uncle Jack salivating at the mere sight of it. And while his stomach rumbled hungrily, reminding him to eat, Luke ignored it to take in his surroundings. The golden plates, utensils, and artwork hanging from the walls indicated his captor was wealthy and wanted their guests and prisoners to know it. Luke attempted to turn intangible and couldn't either from some power dampener in the room of his restraints or, worse, inside of his body. He could not use his powers to escape his current restraints, implied knowledge of ghost hunting and how to restrain someone with his abilities. Last and most worrying to Luke was that his abductor had been able to take him for who knows what purpose, and perhaps he wasn't the only one. A door opened, and an older man with combed-back white hair and a well-trimmed beard walked in. He wore a black blazer buttoned over a purple turtleneck with slacks and loafers pinned to his lapel was a flag pin. Though Luke was unfamiliar with the country it represented, geography was not something that interested him. "Good morning, young man," the man politely greeted with a possibly German accent. He said, "I hope the meal is to your liking," while tapping on his cuff link. The restraints released Luke's hands, freeing himself. The man then sat down at the other end of the table. "My chefs were instructed to prepare food to your liking." Luke had noticed. "You have me at a disadvantage, sir," Luke said, surprised that his headpiece had not been confiscated, "as you know me, but I cannot say the same for you." "Ah, forgive me, I haven't introduced myself. I am Count Oswald von Stumblejump of Drusselstein, and I have brought you here for a particular reason," he said while putting a piece of meat on his plate. And that reason would be, Luke inquired, wanting to know why he was brought here against his will. The Count cut himself a piece of meat before he answered, simple, I am a hunter, and you are my prey. Luke frowned while he had expected foul intentions. He did not expect to be hunted like an animal. I am not wholly heartless, young Mr. Fenton. Should you stay out of my grasp for more than 24 hours, you will be free to go, however should you fail the Count stopped speaking, but Luke got the picture. Just terrific, a man who is the kindred spirit of Skulker, Luke thought sourly. Go on, young man, it would hardly be sporting to deny you a last meal, the Count said before he took a sip of wine. Once our meal is concluded, you may have a half-hour head start. How generous of you, Count, but no, thank you, I am not hungry, Luke said defiantly, refusing the food in front of him. For all this man's talk of being a good sport, even the box ghost wouldn't trust the food of a man who had been abducted and had plans to hunt him like the big game. The Count shrugged. As you wish, he said, pushing on his cuff link. A trapdoor opened beneath Luke's feet, and his chair slid forward, sending him plummeting into the hole and through a chute coming out the other end in a forest. I need to find some way to call for help, Luke thought. Then, getting to his feet, he attempted to use his ghost powers, still unable to transform. This wasn't good. Without his powers, Luke would need to move and to move quickly. Who knows what sort of abilities the Count had at his disposal. Luke broke into a run, moving through the forest as quickly as possible, hoping to avoid whatever the Count had in store. Luke turned towards the way he came when he heard a twig snap. Luke frowned when he didn't see anything. I have a bad feeling about this. Suddenly, high up in the tree line, a red light shone like a great big eye looking down at Luke before a three-pronged claw shot out, breaking through the trees as it flew towards Luke. Acting quickly, Luke rolled to the side, barely dodging the claw snapping shut where Luke had previously been standing. The claw swung out, hitting Luke in the stomach and sending him flying back into a tree. Luke grunted painfully as he slowly stood up. The owner of the claw stepped out of a 2-story tall sphere with 4 legs of segmented metal small compared to its body, and his head looked at Luke with its single glowing red eye. Is that what I think it is? Luke thought, hoping he was wrong because, to Luke, it looked like an omnidroid. The possible omnidroid turned its head toward Luke. Laser turrets opened on the sides of its head, opening fire on Luke. Scrambling into an adrenaline-fueled run, Luke dodged the rapid-fire blasts. Luke leaped over a log as he continued to run, not knowing where he was going. All Luke knew was that he had to get away. A blast grazed Luke's shoulder. Pain erupted like a volcano. Luke grabbed his arm, gritting his teeth in pain. Terrific, it's been outfitted with anti-ghost technology, Luke thought, running through a stream. As he reached the shore, the omnidroid appeared before Luke could move. The omnidroid opened fire, hitting him in the chest and sending him falling back into the stream with a splash. The omnidroid grabbed him in its claw, holding him. Luke saw his brief life flash before his eyes before the omnidroid tossed him through the air. As Luke began to black out from the air pressure in his depowered human form, he saw a cloaked figure fly towards him, holding their hand. Luke reached out and took it. For the second time in 24 hours, Luke awoke from unconsciousness. But, this time, instead of lavish decorations, he found himself resting on the ground, a blue cloak draped over his body like a blanket. Besides a fire was a peculiar-looking young man. He possessed a runner to build with skin the color of sandpaper with wild pitch-black hair sticking up in all directions like a recently used broom. His ears ended in points, as did his nose. He was dressed in an outfit that wouldn't look out of place at a Renaissance fair, a blue tunic with a brown belt, a golden buckle, black pants, and brown fur-lined boots. Curled up on the boy's lap, fast asleep, was a white dog that looked like he could fit in Luke's hand. The boy smiled at Luke before signing, "Good morning." "Good morning," Lupe replied telepathically, surprising the boy as he sat up. "Careful, you're still sore from your battle with the omnidroid," the boy said with the same German accent as the Count while confirming Luke's suspicions about his mechanical adversary. An omnidroid is one of the many devastating weapons invented by Buddy Pines, better known to the world at large as Syndrome, a selfish, petty man with a grudge who took out his grudge against the hero Mr. Incredible by misusing his genius to become an arms dealer with the intent on creating a super weapon to defeat so he would be considered the greatest hero of them all. Syndrome had tested his various omnidroids against superheroes lured to his island and eliminated, improving on the omnidroids as he went. While this was no doubt an earlier model than the one that had been unleashed on Metroburg, it no doubt had been used as the tool of execution for a superhero. Luke slowly got into a more comfortable position to sit. The little wooden dog who had woken up walked over to Luke, sniffing at his hand, apparently liking what he smelled. The dog licked his hand, wagging his tail with his free hand. Luke patted the small dog, surprised at the wooden texture of his fur. Impressive. Weiss rarely warms up to strangers so quickly, the boy said as Weiss walked back over to the boy. Thank you for saving my life, Luke said. The boy across from him nodded, handing him a piece of roasted fish on a flat rock. Luke's stomach rumbled. May I ask who you are? The boy nodded. My name is Ben, but back home in Drusselstein, I'm the hero called Der Kinderlumper, Ben said. I can't say I've heard of you, Luke admitted, not being overly familiar with the heroes outside of the United States and hoping not to offend the person who saved his life. Ben shrugged. I'm no one big like the Fentons. I'm short time, I mostly stop purse snatchers and help cats out of trees, though I did save the crown princess once. I'm sure that's how I got the count's attention. Ben scowled and growled, showing the pointed canines in his mouth. Humans in Drusselstein are a stubborn, superstitious bunch. Most are wary of magic. The count, on the other hand, hates it and wants to destroy it whenever and wherever he can. Luke nodded. He was very familiar with this mindset. Whether it was against mutants, inhumans, alien monsters, or any other group, there was always someone speaking hatred against those who were deemed as different. I take it you are not human. Neen, around 300 or so years ago, my ancestors were transported here in a flood of titans BLD from our homeland in the demon realm, Ben explained. Before you ask, no, the demon realm has nothing to do with the afterlife. Understood. Ben poked at his fish. So anyways, 2 days ago, the count invited me to his manor. He says he wants to personally thank me for saving his niece, the princess. We go expecting a feast, but instead, we got knocked out, and we're told if we're to be hunted like a boar and if we can survive 24 hours, we get to go free. Ben spat into the fire. Math may not be my best subject, but I know it has been much longer than 24 hours. Luke nodded. If I had my powers, I would stand a better chance of beating the Count's Omnidroid. Prisons for powered people in Eastern Europe use a power-suppressing herb that they mix into the food to suppress the inmates' powers, Ben explained. I don't know how, but the Count is using it to suppress your powers and my magic. Weiss barked. Ben chuckled, petting Weiss behind the ears. I know, boy, he can't suppress your magic. Weiss barked one more time before transforming into a wooden statue at the top of a long staff, amazing Luke as he had never seen this type of magic. Luke got an idea. Ben, what exactly can you do with your magic, and please leave no detail unsaid. Ben gave a summary of the magic of the demon realm from the source of his powers, a sack of bile attached to his heart, and his witch's staff, which was a secondary source of magic to the 9 forms of magic that could be performed along with the basic spells that all witchlings are taught in Ben's remote village, along with the magic Ben himself could perform. Construction magic is my specialty. It's how I built the shelter we're in, plus healing magic which I use to heal your wounds, he finished explaining, but I'm not sure how my magic can beat the Omnidroid. Luke explained his plan. The more Ben listened, the larger his smile became. I think it's time we end the Count's hunting trip, don't you agree, Der Kinderlumper? Ben put on his cloak, pulling up his hood. I certainly do, Herr Fenton. Now that Luke had a plan to turn the tables on the Count and his weapon, finding the Omnidroid was easy. The 2-story metal monstrosity was marching through the woods, searching for him. Looking for someone, you poorly constructed pile of scrap, Luke called out, projecting his thoughts as loud as possibly, throwing small rocks to get its attention further. The Omnidroid turned towards him once more. Its laser turrets came out, and it began to fire. Luke turned and ran. The Omnidroid pursued each step in time with its blasts. Luke had to move in a zigzag pattern to keep from being blasted. This would be much easier if he still possessed his powers, Luke thought, but beggars can't be choosers, and the adrenaline was doing more than enough to keep him moving. He was almost there. Luke leaped onto a fallen tree, bridging a chasm and reaching the other side. As expected from the machine's simple AI, as Luke was currently out of range of its turrets to complete its programmed task, it had to cross the chasm. Stepping onto the fallen tree Luke himself had used already, the weight of the machine began to break the tree's structural integrity. Luke grinned as he pulled out Weiss, the borrowed talisman staff, Archimedes once said, moving the staff in a circle of glowing orange energy followed his movements beneath the Omnidroid's feet. Then, the cliff began to curl up, tipping the Omnidroid over. Give me a big enough lever, and I shall move the world. The tree gave way to gravity, pulling down the murderous mechanical construct headfirst into the chasm. Within seconds Luke heard the explosion and saw the flaming wreck that was once the machine that had nearly taken his life along with Ben's. Now the hunter has become the hunted. In a control room, Count Oswald von Stimblegimp was furious about how that supernatural menace defeated his purchased Omnidroid. Before his death, her syndrome had informed him this particular model had been used to slay the incredibly powerful hero Gamma Jack. A mere 16-year-old boy should not have been able to overcome what an experienced superhero, albeit a retired one, could not. Especially with both the best anti-ghost weaponry money could buy and power-suppressing herb being spread through the air through hidden ventilation shafts throughout the island. You seem surprised, Count, a voice said behind him. The Count froze in terror. He turned to see the hooded figure of Der Kinderlumper behind him, half of his face hidden in the shadow of his hood. What's the matter, Count? You look like you've seen a ghost, the hero said, stepping towards him, holding up his finger and moving it in a circle. The Count screamed in fear. That's not possible. You should be dead, the Count stammered. How could you have survived my omnidroid, he said while reaching for the hidden knife he kept in his back. Der Kinderlumper shrugged, holding up his hand. I guess I'm just that good. Perhaps so, the Count admitted before he lunged forward, holding his knife above his head. Der Kinderlumper grabbed the knife, knocking it out of his hands before kneeling him in the stomach, forcing him to the ground. It's over, Count. The Count laughed. You can't do anything to me, monster. Neither you nor Luke Fenton can. I'm a member of the Drusselstein royal family. I have diplomatic immunity. His brother, the king, would certainly not allow his brother to rot in prison. True, but I doubt the king will allow you to keep your immunity when he finds out you used an illegal weapon of mass destruction for hunting a citizen of his country and the brother of dannyphantom, Der Kinderlumper pointed out before laughing, and between you and me your grace prison sounds like a much better option than dealing with a furious Fenton family. The Count, realizing he had no options left to play, was forced to surrender with dignity. A week later, Luke came back home to his apartment. Luke took in a deep breath, closing his eyes to concentrate. He was able to turn intangible. Grinning, he switched to invisibility, then a full transformation. Finally, the power suppression herb was no longer in his system. His full powers were once again under his command. Grinning, Luke went over to the small kitchen he shared with Henry, preparing to make himself a sandwich. The previous week had certainly been interesting. After making it off the Count's private island, dropping him and Ben off with the authorities of Drusselstein, Luke had made his way home thanks to a pay phone and the Spectre speeder coming through a ghost portal. The entire Fenton clan and friends had been on the warpath searching for Luke for the past 24 hours and were very relieved to see their cousin/brother in one piece. Then came the interviews with the media, who had caught wind of Luke's little adventure thanks to a member of a European royal family being placed in custody. Luke rightfully gave most of the credit to the hero Der Kinderlumper, who, without him, Luke would not have been able to defeat the Omnidroid. Nor would he have lived to tell the tale. Luke told the same story to an agent, Rick Dicker, who was in charge of investigating all of Syndrome's illegal activities. As Luke was finishing his sandwich, he heard the front door open behind him. Expecting Henry to have returned from his outing to the Skulk and Lurk bookstore, Luke merely said, "Welcome home," before returning to his search in the fridge for the mayonnaise. His BLT would be N*** without it. "Well, I don't live here, but it's nice to be greeted anyways," a familiar and lovely voice replied, surprising Luke as he quickly abandoned his search for mayonnaise to look at his longtime girlfriend Minako, dressed in a yellow sundress with a white ribbon around her waist, carrying a small bag. Behind her, Henry was closing the door. "And you say Buzz, and I can't surprise you." Luke nodded as he walked over to Minako, hugging her, holding her close, taking in her scent, and feeling her golden blonde hair brush against the skin of his arms. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Minako smiled. "Well, I heard what happened, and I just so happened to have some time off from school, so I came to visit for the weekend," Minako explained, pecking his lips. "Your brothers paid for my ticket." "You're welcome, brother," Henry said, patting Luke on the shoulder as he passed. "Now I'll leave you lovebirds alone. Don't do anything that'll make me an uncle," he teased before he disappeared into his bedroom, leaving behind a furiously blushing Luke and Minako. Once he got his blush under control, he released his girlfriend. "Well, as this is your first trip to Amity Park, what would you like to do?" Luke asked. Minako smiled at him. "How about we have lunch first, and then we can paint the town red?" Minako said. "Did I use that expression right? I got it from this book of expressions Ami-chan gave me." Luke nodded. "Yes, you used it perfectly, and it sounds like an excellent idea." Luke and Minako walked over to the kitchen. There Luke split his sandwich in two, giving one half to his girlfriend while taking the other for himself, enjoying a meal with the love of his life. It began one of the best days of Luke's life. Henry finished ringing up his current customer, handing the customer her books in a bag with the Skulk and Lurk bookstore's logo. "Here you go." The customer, an admittedly pretty goth girl, smiled prettily at him before she took her purchase before she walked off. Henry shrugged, used to it. This wasn't the first time when he was at work that a customer thought he was attractive. Henry would have easily tried to let her down if she had asked him, saying he had a girlfriend. Besides the occasional flirting customer, Henry liked working at the Skulk and Lurk. He liked the gothic atmosphere. His coworkers were friendly, and the manager had let him have the job even though Henry was a clone and technically, at least according to the government, didn't exist. Henry yawned, checking his watch. His shift was over. He'd grab something to eat, and hopefully, by the time he got back to the apartment, he wouldn't find Luke and Minako making out on the couch or something else. Henry shuddered. Not something he wanted to see. Clocking out, Henry waved to the manager on the way out, thinking about what he wanted to eat. Before deciding, he headed toward Stein's, the best place to get a chili cheese dog in Amity Park and the second best place to get a hot dog after Pink's in LA. His stomach grumbled hungrily as he kept going toward his destination. Please wait a minute, that wasn't his stomach. Henry turned to see a mailbox violently shaking, jumping from one leg to another. Seriously, Jerry, Henry thought, annoyed as the mailbox pulled him in, sending him flying face first down a chute. Why did Jerry always have to whoop him on an empty stomach? Henry powered up, landing gracefully in Jerry's office. Henry gave an annoyed scowl. He was about to say something when he heard more screaming, and Clover, Sam, and Alex dropped down on him. Henry caught his girlfriend's bridal style while Clover and Sam levitated in the air. Then, thanks to Henry's unique ghost powers, he let them gently float to the ground. Thanks for the catch, Henry, Sam said. Yeah, thanks, Alex said, smiling up at him. Henry smiled back down at her. Ahem, Jerry said, getting the young couple's attention along with the other two spies. Good afternoon, girls and Henry. Why am I here? Henry asked, a little bit hangry, already having an idea. Henry was Whoop's consultant for everything ghost-related, so if Jerry was bringing him in for the mission, it was either something to do with a ghost, or it at least looked like it did enough for Jerry to deem it necessary to call him in. Your mission, girls, Jerry said, will be to investigate the sabotage attempts happening to the contestants of the show Talent Star Dash. Clover's excited squeal cut off Jerry. Oh my gosh, I love Talent Star, she said with stars in her eyes. What is our cover? Will we be going in as contestants? Clover, that wouldn't be fair to the actual contestants if we just started competing in the finals, Sam lectured. Quite right, Sam. Alex. Sam, your cover will be new hires for the stage crew. Clover, you will be posing as a college student writing for her school paper on the Phantom of the Disco reappearance. Resurgence? Henry asked curiously. Jerry nodded, pushing a button. Yes, the opera house where the finals are being held was, according to legends, haunted by a phantom when the opera house was briefly a disco in the 1970s. If this phantom is truly a ghost, it will be your job to deal with it. Henry nodded. Understood, Jerry. In an hour, Henry and the girls were in the opera house. Henry could see Alex and Sam working backstage while Clover was interviewing the host of the show Brock Pimento about the haunting. Meanwhile, Henry was invisibly looking for signs of ghost activity and checking if any contestants were being overshadowed. There was a ventriloquist Waldo, a little person whose act of sitting on his puppet's lap was honestly kind of funny. He also seemed to have a lot of luck with the ladies, especially with the rock band girl Asaurus Rex. Neither of them showed any hint of being overshadowed. There was a cheesy-looking stage magician. The Great Paulding was also a dud. A musician, Lottie Lavelle, seemed to be his biggest suspect, but that might be her violent personality and her very descriptive threats to her competitors. Seriously, it's just a competition, woman. There were two kids, a violinist named Emma, who neither she nor her parents were overshadowed. The other child, Chrissy, was a spoiled little diva, and her parents were just as bad. Unfortunately, they weren't overshadowed. The last contestant was a singing duet who, if Henry remembered right from the one time he talked to her, was friends with Tucker's girlfriend, Velma Dinkley. She was also here along with a skinny guy and a Great Dane. So far, Henry didn't see any sign of ghost activity. Maybe it was a guy in a costume or one of the contestants trying to sabotage the others. Henry floated down from the rafters, landing next to Sam. I haven't seen any ghost activity, he whispered. Sam nodded. So far, Alex and I haven't seen any trouble backstage except for an assistant director who's a massive neat freak. For now, stay alert. Who knows if there will be another attack. Henry nodded, hanging around haunting the place until the dress rehearsals, watching the acts one after another. Everything seemed to go wrong during Pauldini's magic act. He was pulled up into the air, dangling over the stage like a worm on a hook. Girlosaurus, their instruments broke when they began their song. Lottie's throat spray was replaced with something that made her lose her voice. Waldo's puppet was set on fire during his act, and an evil laugh echoed across the theater. Chrissy must win, says the Phantom, a menacing voice demanded before the power went out. Okay, maybe something was going on after all. Henry and the girls weren't the only ones who thought so. Velma and her friends were also investigating. Didn't Tucker once say something about her being a detective, he wondered. The host decided with so many acts dropping out that they'd skip straight to the finals and have them tomorrow night, phantom or no phantom. That meant he and the girls were on a time limit. We've got to find Something, Henry said. He and the others were in a hotel room paid for by Whoop with enough room for the girls and an adjoining room just for Henry. Sam nodded, pulling out her computer. I found old news footage of the original haunting in the 70s. Check this out. Everyone looked at the screen. They watched a green-skinned ghoul with strands of blue hair on its bald head, glowing red eyes, a suit with puffy shoulders, and a cape destroy a speaker laughing maniacally. I guess it could be a ghost, Henry said. However, he could not tell if the ghost was real from watching the old footage. I think we should be looking into Chrissy and her parents. Why else would the Phantom care who wins a talent show, Alex said, frowning, having not liked the parents. Being around them had made her feel like she was surrounded by Mandy but somehow louder. What if this has nothing to do with the contest at all, Clover said. I mean, sure, the prize money is nice, but is it worth sabotaging the other acts? Unless it's the show wanting to keep the money, like when that total drama show kept finding ways not to pay the winner of the show, Sam added. Look, it doesn't matter. We've got to find this Phantom guy before someone gets killed on live TV. Henry got up, kissing Alex on the cheek before he headed towards his room. The next day it went from finding out who was the Phantom to finding out who wasn't the Phantom. First, Clover found that the owner Mel Richmond of the Opera House was dressing up like the Phantom to get insurance money somehow. Then Sam, the host of the show Brick Pimento, was trying to save his job by getting more publicity for the show to save his job. Then Alex found out the neat freak stage manager, Dewey Ottoman, was a thief who stole cleanliness-related treasures like the soap diamond. Who names a diamond after soap? Then Tucker's girlfriend and her friends found the Phantom from the 70s. So yeah, he wasn't a ghost. He was just a guy named Steve who lived in the sewers, but he hadn't gone into the Opera House since the 70s when it was a disco. He also somehow ended up as the new host of the show. Henry was there when it happened, and he still had no idea how it happened, but good for him either way. Although the weird thing was that none of them had a motive for if Chrissy won or not, although Chrissy's parents seemed very confident that they were going to win. That was suspicious, but maybe they just thought their daughter was that good. Still, Henry would keep an eye on the two of them. Something still seemed off about the two of them, and it wasn't just how irritating they were. I think Alex was understating it. They're way worse like Mandy, Henry had thought. Finally, it was show time. Steve, the new host, started the show. First went Chrissy, the spoiled little BRT who sang an incredibly inappropriate song for a kid her age. Seriously, what kind of parent lets their kid sing a song like this? When Emma Gale was about to go on, Henry noticed something. It was for a brief second, but he saw a shadow moving in the rafters. Floating up, he landed in the rafters. Henry saw three figures in the rafters: a giant man with red hair wearing a costume, a little kid in a green jumpsuit with a high-tech backpack on, and a blonde girl wearing a black and gray jumpsuit with her hair held with a gray ribbon. There's the first loser, then we'll get the blonde and the redhead next, the blonde sneered. Then, she looked to the giant, dropped the sandbag on the BRT mammoth. The big guy mammoth grunted. Not on my watch, Henry thought. Then, flying forward, turning tangible, he punched the guy mammoth in the chin. He fell off the rafter, landing on his back with a thud. I'm okay, Mammoth called, the stage broke my fall. Down below, the audience began to panic about Velma's skinny friend, and the Great Dane grabbed Emma, getting her to safety. The blonde rolled her eyes. Idiot Gizmo, terminate this loser. The little guy Gizmo's metal tentacles rose from his backpack and a missile launcher fired at Henry. Henry held his hand out, making a shield for the missiles to bounce off of before he ran at Gizmo, throwing a punch. I'm not all that comfortable hitting a kid, but I'll make an exception in your case. I'm not a kid, you pit-sniffing Phantom. I'm just short, Gizmo yelled. Annoyed turrets popped out of his backpack, firing green lasers. Henry bobbed to the side, dodging the blasts before he held his hand out, firing an ecto-blast destroying Gizmo's backpack. Before Gizmo could do something, he got attacked from behind, metal restraints wrapping around his body, trapping him on the ground. Alex was standing behind Gizmo. Thanks, Alex, Henry told his girlfriend. Don't mention it, babe. Henry turned to the last supervillain. Ugh, ridiculous, utterly ridiculous, she said, annoyed. This is what I get for sharing a gig with a pair of losers. Clover and Sam, also in their catsuits, surrounded the girl from the other side. It's over, I have know who you are, Clover said. Seriously, isn't it by now? The supervillain starts monologuing about who they are and their evil plan. Please, do you think I'm as stupid as Hawkmoth or something? The girl said, her fingers turning into claws. She ran at Clover and Sam. The two girls pulled out perfume bottles, spraying them, releasing a cloud of blue mist and freezing the rafters. The girl leaped up onto the railing, throwing a bolo wrapping around Sam and Clover, binding them together. She then kicked the two bound spies over the edge. Clover, Sammy, Alex shouted, jumping over the railing using her grappling hook. She swung across the stage, catching her BFFs before getting them out. Mammoth threw a punch at her, which she was quick to dodge. Henry snarled, throwing a punch at the girl. She caught his punch and hit Henry with a kick to the chin. Henry stumbled back, recovering. He grabbed her foot and threw her to the side before he flew after her. Henry and the girl landed, and here I thought I was the only phantom in this dump, she sneered. She and Henry circle each other. You were behind all the sabotage attempts, Henry figured out, you Gizmo and Mammoth, you were working for Chrissy or just for her parents. Please, the whole loser family paid for us to sabotage this loser show, and when the last 2 acts didn't run off like the rest, we decided to up the ante, she bragged, not caring or maybe not realizing she was still on live TV because a camera was still rolling. Besides, who cares what happens to a bunch of poor people anyways? That sounded familiar, and Henry thought as everything clicked into place: the French accent, the fighting style, the lack of care for other people, and the constantly repeated line of calling everything ridiculous. You're Chloe Bourgeois, Henry said, you disappeared after you got arrested as Queen Bee. The supervillain Chloe scoffed, ugh, all I did was prove how good of a superhero I was to that no-good but and her flea-bitten boyfriend. You derailed a train and put people's lives in danger, Henry yelled, angry at how little she cared for people. Superheroes don't do that. Chloe scoffed, oh please, like you're a superhero, she said, looking at Henry, eyeing him up and down. What's that supposed to mean? Alex demanded, furious for her boyfriend. Please, he's supposed to be Danny Phantom science experiment or something, right? Chloe demanded. Sure, he looks like Danny Phantom, but he doesn't act like Danny Phantom. He doesn't make witty banter or use nerd ghost gadgets or anything, she continued. Even if he were a real person, he's not Danny's phantom brother. He's only half a brother, she continued. He's not even that, since he's just pretending to be a person, and he's pretending if he thinks he's more than just half of Danny's phantom's brother, as long as he doesn't do more than look like him. Everyone stopped to look at her, everyone, and even Mammoth was looking at her. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, he said. Honestly, I'm kinda embarrassed to be on the same side as you, and I've worked with Billy numerous. Alex looked ready to rip Chloe or whatever she was calling herself apart while Sam and Clover cut free from the restraints holding them. He's right beside the fact that Henry is a real person and not just pretending. Siblings don't have to have the same personality for them to be siblings, you brain-dead moron, Clover shouted. Seriously, it's people saying stupid stuff. Like that makes people think all blondes are dumb. Oh, shut up, loser. Mammoth, squish them, or I'll keep your cut, Chloe ordered. I'll deal with Danny Phantom's half a brother. Henry ignored her words and noticed she had a glowing bolo on her hand. My daddy sent me to America after the Queen Bee thing, but I found something better, the Wolf Miraculous. Now I can make people see their worst fears. I'm Queen Wolf. You just switched the bee in your name for Wolf. Heck, your costume looks like the Queen Bee one, just with gray instead of yellow, Sam pointed out, having broken free and the 3 girls having trapped Mammoth. Are you that unoriginal? Chloe growled. Oh, shut up and taste my nightmare, she called, throwing the glowing bola. Henry stopped the bola in its tracks with his powers, changing its direction. It wrapped around Chloe. Her eyes widened, turning from blue to yellow. She screamed before she fainted at whatever she saw. Her costume faded, going into a necklace with a yellow moon pendant. Henry rolled his eyes, looking down at the unconscious miraculous holder with contempt in his eyes. Shows over, your highness, he mocked. Within the hour, Jerry had arrived with Whoop agents to take away the 3 supervillains along with the family who'd hired them. Excellent work, spies, Jerry congratulated, watching as agents put the Wolf Miraculous into a jewelry box. Taking it away, we've made sure to edit you ladies out and replace you with members of the Titans to preserve your identity. The girls sighed in relief, knowing their cover wasn't blown. What will you do with the Wolf Miraculous? For the moment, we'll keep it in storage, then we'll reach out to the heroes of Paris to hand off the Miraculous, Jerry explained. You're free to stay in the hotel for another night if you wish and enjoy the sights, he offered Henry. Clover and Sam looked at each other before they nodded. Hey mind giving us a ride to Beverly Hills? Sammy and I have a project we need to work on. You do? Alex asked until she got elbowed by Sam. Oh, right, you do. Very well, ladies, we should get going then. Henry, Alex. Enjoy your time in the Windy City. Henry smiled, looking at his girlfriend, who smiled back at him. We will, Jerry, thanks. As far as Buzz was concerned, being a plumber was a great job, traveling the galaxy, meeting interesting people, helping them. But, of course, there were downsides, like the paperwork and stakeouts were the most boring part of fighting crime. Buzz was sitting in the passenger seat of Ben's car with Ben, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. The two were watching an open road leading out of Bellwood. According to some of Kevin's contacts, People working for Dumas were smuggling apocalypse weapons through Bellwood Gwen, and Kevin was in Kevin's car on the only other road leading out of town. Buzz tapped his badge. Anything on your end? He asked. No, Buzz, his girlfriend Gwen answered, sounding a little frustrated either with him or how long the stakeout was taking. You sure Kevin's contacts were right about them leaving tonight? Ben asked. For the third time, Tennyson. Yes, Kevin said, sounding frustrated. The four of them had been on a stakeout for nearly 5 hours now, and there hadn't been any sign yet. We should have grabbed some Mr. Smoothie or something, Ben said. Buzz was going a jab about Ben being addicted when he noticed a truck without its headlights coming up the road. Hang on, Buzz said, watching the truck. It looked like a mover van. The license plate was missing. Heads up, they're here, Buzz said. Follow them. We'll meet you, and we can cut them off, Gwen said. Ben nodded before driving off, following after them. Buzz transformed into going ghost. He phased out of the car and followed the car, grabbing onto the roof. He looked down to see two menacing-looking guys with apocalypse weapons on their laps. Man, I got a bad feeling about driving on Ben 10's turf, the guy in the passenger seat said, looking around paranoid. You never know which one of those alien freaks he's going to turn into. The driver scoffed. Relax, he ain't the bat or anything. Guy might be able to turn into all those aliens, but the lights ain't on upstairs if you catch my meaning. He laughed at his joke. That doofus will be drinking smoothies while we're back on the highway to our guys in Chicago. You think the boss ain't spreading himself too thin? We should be taking out the guys in Wisconsin before going after the Chicago families, the passenger seat guy said. Didn't you listen to the plan? The boss is going to take those two out at the summit next week, the driver said. That sounded interesting. Mind telling me more? Buzz asked. Sure, see the bow dash? The driver stopped, looking up to see Buzz lean over the top of the windshield. He gave the two gun runners a cheeky wave. They tried to blast them, and thanks to Henry, he knew those weapons were dangerous, so before they could pull the blaster, he phased into the truck. Turning his legs solid, he kicked them in the face, knocking them back. Then, grabbing the blasters, he used his ghostly fire to melt them. Blasters. Slamming down on the brakes, he stopped just as Kevin's car pulled up. He waved at Gwen, who just rolled her emerald green eyes with a slight smile on her face. The two mobsters were looking dazed and were starting to notice that they were surrounded. So you want to tell me about this summit? Buzz asked, or do you want to risk taking your chance with Ben 10 and his friends? The driver, who had seemed so confident he could get away with getting out of town, now seemed to be sweating nervously. Lambeau Stadium. It's taking place at Lambeau Stadium during the Bears and Packers game, he said quickly. Of course, it is during a Packers game, Buzz thought. Buzz smiled. Thanks, he said before putting cuffs on him and the other driver, phasing out. It was game day at Lambeau Stadium, and everyone was excited, waiting for the action to get started, but Ben and his team were waiting for a different kind of action to get started. Gwen, Ben, and Kevin Incognito were sitting in the audience while Buzz was going to be in the private box that they believed the conference was going to be in, since it was one previously owned by one of Vlad's shell companies. If there was anywhere in the stadium that the meeting was going to be, that's where. Keep your comms on. If we know where the apocalypse weapons are stashed, we can get them all off the streets, Ben instructed. Buzz nodded. Aye, Captain, he said with a joking salute. Gwen rolled her eyes, walking over to him and giving him a peck on the cheek. Be careful, she asked. Aren't I always? Buzz asked with a hopefully reassuring smile. Buzz smiled at her before he turned invisible, heading into the stadium through a wall. He headed up towards the private box. Buzz noticed the swank-looking decorations, a round table with 3 chairs facing the game and a second table with expensive-looking food. Sheesh, between that count who kidnapped Luke and these guys, maybe crime does pay, Buzz thought. The door opened, and an employee at the stadium let in 2 men. The first was an albino man, pure white, dressed in a pitch-black suit with a silver tie clip. Everything about Buzz screamed danger to him as he, for a second, looked right at the corner where Buzz was. He grunted. Something wrong, boss? The guy following was a short little man with a flat head, asked. No, nothing, the man said, taking his seat. Shortly after came a young woman with her red hair in a ponytail in a green dress with black stockings and heels. A big blonde guy who looked like he could be a pro football player followed after she took the seat. Where's Dumas Tombstone? She asked the scary-looking guy. Tombstone? I don't want to know how he got that name. He'll be here soon enough, Tombstone said, looking towards the door. An unassuming man in a gray and black suit came in, followed by a guard who could be his brother. Gentleman, lady, thank you for coming, he said, taking the third seat with a small condescending smile on his face. Take off that mask, the woman snapped, annoyed, while Buzz raised an invisible eyebrow. What mask? Indeed, Dumas, there's no need to hide behind a mask in the current company, Tombstone said. He said, seemingly annoyed. Dumas raised an eyebrow before he chuckled for a moment. We all wear masks, the ones we use to cover our faces for polite society. Dumas raised a hand to his face. A hologram started to fade away, revealing an outfit that wouldn't be out of place at a Renaissance fair. Metal mask covering his face, and the ones that are necessary. Buzz bit back, growl not to snarl at who Dumas turned out to be, Michael Morningstar aka Darkstar, a power-hungry sociopath who used girls from his class as food. The last anyone had seen Darkstar, and he'd tried to use some magical artifact to restore his good looks and, of course, gain power for himself. Dumas, Buzz realized, the guy who wrote The Three Musketeers and its sequel, The Man in the Iron Mask, figures Michael would use something like that as his mobster name. But, of course, he probably didn't think anyone would make the connection to him. And the other mask, the woman Vid asked. For the sake of your appetites, my lady, I'll keep that one on, Dumas, aka Michael, said. Vid shrugged. Fine, whatever, let's get this over with. A waiter brought over glasses and a bottle of champagne. Here's how it is. Vlad Masters ran the crime around here. With him gone, I've been the one keeping the organization he built from falling apart, with certain exceptions. Your loyalty to Masters is understandable, Tombstone said, swirling the wine in his cup. He took you and trained, you taught you, and you rose in the ranks to where you are. It's understandable, commendable even, but ultimately foolish. Vid gripped her glass tightly. Masters took everything too personally. His petty grudge with the Fenton family became his downfall. A criminal empire should be like a business. And like a business, it needs someone at the top. Unquestionable leader, Michael added, someone with the ambition to take the business to the next level. Vid scoffed. We know all about your ambition, she insulted, moving in on the Chicago family's turf trafficking weapons from Apocalypse. Does that mask you wear keep the oxygen from going to your brain? It's a miracle we haven't had Superman and the rest of the league hounding us. Michael laughed, actually laughed, and then he said what no doubt was the stupidest thing Buzz had probably ever heard anyone say. If Superman comes, I'll go down in history as the man who killed him. That was the dumbest thing Buzz had ever heard. Anyone, did Michael seriously think he was going to kill Superman? Apparently, Vid and Tombstone thought the same thing, judging by the wide-eyed incredulous look on their faces. That's why I called you here, to give you one chance to join me or be exterminated. Tombstone rose. I'm leaving, he said. So am I, Vid said. I've got better things than waste my time dealing with lunatics thinking they can kill Superman. And here I was hoping things would go peacefully, Michael said, his hands glowing with mana. He fired beams at the other two guards, knocking them into a wall. Tombstone shrugged off the blast like it was nothing, while Vid snarled, clenching her fist, a silver ring on her finger spreading out, becoming a red and black armor rushing at her. Michael's bodyguard ran up between Michael and Vid, taking off an ID mask and revealing he was a necro-friggin in a suit. He let out a blast of icy cold mist from his mouth. Vid flipped over the freezing breath, grabbing the necro-friggin, throwing him face first into the window. Glass rained down. Vid then flew at Michael, throwing a punch. Michael blocked with a shield. Tombstone ran him from the other end, throwing a punch and hitting him in the head, a wonderful sight that made Buzz smile. Maybe that's because he used my girlfriend like a battery. Michael recovered, firing an explosive wave that tore up the room. Buzz turned visible, making a shield, pushing himself back, and crashing against the wall. All three mob bosses looked at Buzz like a hungry predator. Oh crud, he thought. Well, it looks like we've got a rat among us, Michael said. A Fenton, I'm going to enjoy this, Vid said with a savage grin. Oh, double crud. Buzz banked to the left, dodging a blast that nearly took his head off. He could feel the heat from the blast against his ear. Figures, the chick who worked for Vlad has ghost weapons, Buzz thought before he got rushed by Tombstone and hit with a punch that knocked the wind out of him. Tombstone grabbed the back of his head, pulling his nose towards his knee. Buzz turned intangible, passing through Tombstone's knee and through the floor. Buzz came out behind Tombstone and tried to hit him. Instead, the Tombstone turned on his heels, moving surprisingly fast for a guy his size, and their fists collided. Buzz grits his teeth but doesn't scream. He figured out why this guy was called Tombstone. It felt like his body was made of granite. Before Buzz could make another move, a WHP out of Darkstar's corrupted mana grabbed him around the waist and pulled him through the window. Vid took the chance to blast Michael, sending him flying out of the room. He rolled down the bleachers, landing with a satisfying crash against the railing. His mask cracked down the middle. He ripped it off, showing his disfigured face. You were right. Looking at your face does make me lose my appetite, Vid mocked before she turned her arms, opening fire at both Tombstone and Buzz. Firing a barrage of ecto bullets, Buzz brought up a shield, the blasts exploding off them. Buzz pulled out his badge. Guys, I could use some backup now, he called urgently. While dodging a beam from an enraged Michael, I'm going to drain every drop of mana from your body until you look like a mummy, he shouted at Vid, firing blasts at her. Vid leaped out, flying with a jetpack built into the back of her armor. Tombstone leaped out, punching Vid in the face and sending her flying through the air over the field. Underneath Vid, tendrils of goop made from what looked like purple mud enveloped Vid. The mob boss tried to break out, but her blasts did not affect the Lenopan. The purple sludge turned into a dome with a face and the Omnitrix symbol on one side. "Sorry we're late," Ben said. There was the sound of a metal baseball bat hitting a sidewalk. Buzz looked to see Kevin standing over Tombstone, his body covered in a steel plating, but Dumas had a small army of goons in case anyone with powers showed up. "You beat my men," Michael exclaimed skeptically. "No, that shouldn't be possible." A blast of mana hit Michael, trapping him in a dome. Michael tried to absorb it, but it shocked him. "You can't absorb my mana, Michael. Thanks to this, an ectoneurite talisman," Gwen explained. Around her neck was a purple necklace with a black circle inside of it on a leather cord. "Very clever, lovely Gwen. How did you know it was me?" Michael asked. "I suspected it was you because of your alias. Alexander Dumas wrote The Man in the Iron Mask, Michael," Gwen explained. "Now, where are you keeping your stash of weapons, Apocalypse?" "Do you seriously expect me to talk?" Michael asked. Buzz landed next to Ben. "Not really," Ben said, "but I don't need you to talk. I need you to think." Tapping the Omnitrix, he transformed into a Martian wearing a white and black bodysuit covering below the neck everything, but his hands legged the Omnitrix symbol on his arm, thanks to Marstonaut. "I still think that's a dumb name," Buzz muttered. "Better than your suggestion," Kevin replied. Buzz ignored it. He thought Red Sun had sounded cool. Ben's eyes glowed. "Found it, and they're in a warehouse just outside Madison." Gwen nodded. "I'll call the plumbers. Kevin tells the police the situation has been handled, and the people can be allowed back into the stadium." Kevin nodded, having restrained Tombstone by leaving him wrapped up in the guardrails, and Vid was left on the field. Buzz went to grab the unconscious mob boss and put her in cuffs. When she woke up and started to laugh, she told him. "For what, taking you to jail?" Buzz asked, confused as he grabbed her, bringing her up to her feet. "No, for helping my boss get rid of his competitors," Vid answered. Before Buzz could ask what she meant, a current surged across her armor, forcing Buzz to let go of her. Gwen and Kevin ran down on platforms of mana while Ben flew down. Buzz and Gwen fired blasts at Gwen, trying to contain her, while Ben slammed down on the Omnitrix, transforming into Wildvine, who sent tendrils of vines to wrap around Vid. The mobster grinned, tapping a button on her bracer. A small capsule shouted out down from the floor, shattering into red liquid. "That's impossible," Buzz thought, shocked, watching as Vid vanished along, leaving no trace of her. "That's impossible." "It has to be," Buzz muttered. "It just has to be," he muttered again. Gwen walked up to him with a concerned look on her face. "Buzz, what's wrong?" "Gwen, you're the magic expert. How many ways are there to travel places with water?" he asked. He wasn't sure what he saw but wanted to ensure that what he saw wasn't possible. Depending on the spell and the properties of the water, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands throughout the galaxy. "So why do you need to know?" Gwen asked again. Then, reaching out, she held his face between her hands. "Buzz, you're really beginning to scare me. What's wrong?" Buzz reached out, holding her hands with his own. "It's nothing, just me seeing things," Buzz told her, not wanting her to worry. "Okay, if you're sure." He honestly wasn't, but right now, he'd say he was, but he would be. In the office of a high-rise overlooking a city, Vid appeared out of a portal, shaking water out of her hair. "W back, my love. How did it go?" Vid smiled lovingly, tapping her ring finger. Her armor receded off her body, turning back into the ring. "Just like you hoped, Tombstone and Dumas are in custody." She slowly walked over to the chair and its occupant. Draping her arm over the top of the chair, she sat down on the armrest. "I did have to use our emergency escape plan, though," she admitted, the walking hairball grizzly. "I was expecting maybe those two goody two-shoes from Chicago, but Ben 10 himself and his merry band of sidekicks showed up." "Really, that's a surprise. I thought we were beneath the notice of someone so high up on the heroic food chain," the person said. "Blame Dumas. They were prepared for him. He must have done something to tip them to his operations." A strong hand reached out, snaking around Vid's waist. It pulled her into the lap of the person in the chair. Vid smiled, looking up into the eyes of Ranger. "It doesn't matter, my love," he said. "The heroes will win the apocalypse, weapons will be off the street, we'll lay low, absorb Tombstone's and Dumas organizations into ours, and then it'll be business as usual, my queen of crime." Vid smiled, liking the sound of that. "Sounds good to me, my king," she said, reaching up and cradling Ranger's face with her hands. She kissed him. The resurrected clone of dannyphantom kissed her back, holding her tight against him. Danny, Sam, and Tucker were listening to Mr. Lancer in English class. They were learning about the famous play Romeo and Juliet. But unfortunately, most of the students were not interested in what Mr. Lancer was saying and just ignored him for the dance next week. Mr. Lancer was upset that most of his students weren't paying attention to the lecture, so he banged his hands on the desk to get everyone to listen to him. "The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn, please pay attention, students," Mr. Lancer yelled. Everyone looked up to the bald teacher. "Now that I have your attention, we are going to do the famous and most tragic play, Romeo and Juliet," he announced. Everyone groaned at Mr. Lancer's announcement about doing another play. "I hope he doesn't choose me," Danny whispered to his friends. "And the person that will be our Romeo is dannyphantom," Mr. Lancer said. Danny groaned that Mr. Lancer chose him to be Romeo as the many girls that weren't Sam or Valerie wanted to play Juliet to be close to the ghost boy. Paulina was sure that Mr. Lancer would choose her as Juliet because she thought she and the ghost boy were soul mates. As the girls were wondering who would play Juliet, Mr. Lancer slammed his hands on the desk to get everyone's attention back to him. "Paradise Lost, calm down, ladies. We are holding auditions for the role of Juliet and the rest of the cast," Lancer explained to his students. All the other students groaned that they had to get the part on their acting abilities, then Mr. Lancer picked them out as he did Danny. "Why chose me, Mr. Lancer? Why can't anyone else take the role? Danny wants to get out of the spotlight for once." "Danny, you did a great job in our last play, so having you as our lead of this play can give us success once again," Lancer explained to him, only for the ghost boy to sigh about his predicament. "Mr. Lancer, I don't want special treatment because I'm Phantom. Let the other students try to get the role over me. I'd rather stay out of the spotlight," Danny told him. Mr. Lancer put his finger on his chin, thinking about what Danny said about giving the other student a chance at the role of Romeo. "All right, Danny, if any other students are good enough to be Romeo, then you can play another role," Mr. Lancer told the ghost boy. "Thank you, Mr. Lancer," Danny said. The next day. Besides Tucker, all the guys from the English class wanted to play another role because he already had a girlfriend. But unfortunately, most of the students weren't as good as Romeo. So Danny felt worried that no one would convince Lancer to let them take the role of Romeo. As the last male student tried and failed to impress Lancer, the bald teacher announced, "I have decided that Danny would still be out, Romeo," Mr. Lancer said. All the guys groaned that Danny still had the role even though Danny didn't want the role in the first place. "It seems that Danny will still have the part of Romeo. I'm sorry, gentlemen," Mr. Lancer apologized to the male students. "Let Danny do a line of Romeo," Weston West said to Mr. Lancer. "All right, Mr. West, let's see if is the best choice for Romeo," Mr. Lancer told him as Danny sighed. Danny read from the script that Lancer gave to him. "But, soft. What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun," Danny quoted the famous line the best he could. Mr. Lancer clapped his hands for Danny doing the lines as best as possible. "Impressive, Mr. Fenton, you did those lines well," Lancer smiled at the ghost boy. The other male students thought it was pretty good as well. However, they thought Danny was going to screw up his lines or something, so he didn't get the role of Romeo. West glared at the ghost boy for doing the lines well. Meanwhile, the girls that weren't Sam or Valerie all gave a dreamy sigh about how well Danny did those lines. "The ghost boy is our Romeo, and I'll be his Juliet," Paulina declares to everyone in the room. Paulina walked to Danny and wrapped her arms around his neck. Danny only phased out of Paulina's grip and walked past her. "I have a girlfriend, Paulina, and you haven't acted for the part yet," Danny told her. "We are soulmates," ghost boy Paulina said. "No, we're not, Paulina, and we'll never be because I already have a girlfriend," Danny told her for the millionth time this month. "To tame a shrew, Paulina, leave Mr. Fenton alone, or you'll get detention," Mr. Lancer warned. Paulina puffed her cheek and walked away from Danny. "Alrighty then, now ladies, show me who will be our Juliet," Mr. Lancer said as most of the girls that signed up to play Juliet gathered around. Most of the girls did good performances in the position for Juliet. However, Mr. Lancer couldn't find the right person to play the role of Juliet. There were only 2 girls left. "Star Strong, you're next," Mr. Lancer called out. The blonde walked up on stage and took a deep breath. Good night, parting such sweet sorrow, that I'll say good night till it is morrow. We found our Juliet," Mr. Lancer declared. "Really?" Star sounded surprised. "What? I should be Juliet, not Star. I'm the ghost boy's soulmate, his only perfect match," Paulina started to whining. "I'm sorry, Star, but you have to be my understudy while I'll be the beautiful Juliet. Ms. Sanchez, my decision is final. You will have detention for 2 days with one more outburst like that," Mr. Lancer warns Paulina. Paulina shut her mouth so she wouldn't get into any trouble. Then, as Lancer gives the roles to the rest of the class, Paulina whispers that she wishes she was Juliet. Star was slightly upset by Paulina wanting to take away her part just because she was in love with dannyphantom. She wanted to prove that she was more than just a satellite. Mr. Lancer, I would do my best to be a good Juliet, Star said with a confident smile. Paulina thought of another way of getting the role of Juliet, but she had to do it when Mr. Lancer wasn't around. As school was over, Danny and his friend went to the Nasty Burger to hang out. It has been a long since Danny, Sam, and Tucker have hung out. I can't believe that Star is going to be Juliet. What is going to tell Penny about this? Tucker asked his best friend. I'm going to tell her that Lancer chooses me as Romeo, and she doesn't have to worry about anything. I'm not going to fall in love with Star and break my girlfriend's heart. Danny is not feeling that worried. Danny! Star called out to him. Danny and his friend stopped to see Star running up behind them. What do you want, Star? Danny asked. We are going to start practicing our line, Fenton. Come on, Star grabbed Danny by the collar. A few days later. I'm honestly not sure how to feel about this, Danny said to the sky while he sat down with a hamburger in his lap. Star may not act like Paulina constantly flirting with me, but she's not exactly a friend either. Danny shook his head. Maybe I should just quit the play. Danny looked to the person he was eating lunch with. What do you think? Kara Kent chewed on a bite of her burger for a second before she swallowed and answered, honestly, unlike some people, I'm really glad I've still got a secret identity, she told him. Ha ha, Danny said sarcastically, elbowing Kara, who playfully rolled her eyes. While the two of them weren't romantically involved after the blind date 2 years ago, they had easily become friends over the years, meeting now and then to talk. Kara put her burger down. Did you have fun? The daughter of Krypton asked. What? Danny asked. The play last year you were in last year. Did you have fun? Kara repeated. Danny thought about it, and honestly, he made sure he had memorized lines, and some drama club members took the play way too dramatic. He did have fun. It was nice not just to be dannyphantom and be Danny Fenton. Yeah, it was fun. Then do it, dummy. Life is short, and for people in our line of work, it can be shorter, Kara said, looking down with a frown. Danny frowned, too. How's Barbara? He asked, remembering what had happened to the heroine from Gotham City. Getting used to the new chair, she wanted to say thank you to your parents, Kara said, passing on the message. Danny nodded. His parents thought it was the least they could do when they heard about her accident. Danny hadn't told them that Barbara was secretly Batgirl. Keyword being was. They were happy to do it, Danny said, finishing his burger. Thanks for the advice, Kara. No problem. I'm surprised you weren't worried about what Penny might think of you playing Romeo to someone else's Juliet, she teased. Danny laughed. Penny's cool with it. She knows it's just a show, and she's my one and only, Danny said, like I knew I was her one and only when she played Juliet at her school last year. Kara nodded, glad that after everything Danny had been through, he didn't have relationship drama on top of everything else. The two finished their food, and Kara got up. I got to get going, have to get ready for a date, she said with a smile and a blush on her face. I got to go too, Danny said. He had agreed to meet Star at her house to go over lines. Getting up, the two flew away from the planet statue that stood on top of the Daily Planet where they'd been eating burgers. After a quick flight from Metropolis to Amity Park, Danny headed to Star's house. It was a nice-looking place in one of the fancier neighborhoods. With how standoffish and snobby Star acted in their freshman year, he was surprised she didn't live in Poulter Heights. Danny walked up the driveway and rang the doorbell. He waited for a second, and a woman opened the door. Can I help you? Hi, I'm here to meet Star. Is she here? The woman looked at him curiously with a raised eyebrow, making Danny wonder if he had accidentally knocked on the wrong door, and she had no idea who Star was. Yes, Star mentioned a boy was coming over, but she forgot to mention her new boyfriend was so handsome. Boyfriend, Danny thought with wide eyes. Before Danny could correct the woman, she let him into the house, telling him to head up to Star's room and to leave the door open. Danny blushed, embarrassed at that. Star, your boyfriend is here, she called up the stairs, making Danny blush even redder. Danny quickly hurried up the stairs before Star's mom killed him through teasing comments. Boy, that'd be a way to go stop Vlad from destroying multiple universes and ending up croaking from embarrassment. Danny found Star's room pretty easily. She pulled him into it. Did you tell Georgia you were my boyfriend? She hissed at him. Georgia, you mean your mom? Danny asked, confused, and for the record, no, I didn't. She came to that conclusion on her own. No, Georgia isn't my mom, although she raised me more than my actual mother did. Star whispered the last part, though Danny still heard, figuring like Sam, Star's mom was a sore subject for her. Danny decided not to bring it up. So lines, Danny said. Yes, lines, let's do them, she said. The two of them rehearsed without interruption for an hour or so. Then Georgia came in asking if they would like snacks this time. Danny was able to introduce himself and explain that he had a girlfriend already and he wasn't dating Star. Georgia apologized for teasing him, and Danny said it was fine. The two of them walked down the stairs to the living room. Georgia left to get snacks while Star and Danny sat on the couch in silence. "You sound nice as Juliet, Danny said. "Thanks, you're not so bad yourself," she said. "I didn't think a space nut would be into acting." "Who told you I was a space nut?" Danny asked. "You do remember the time you dated my best friend, right?" Star pointed out, "where you'd spend all night chatting online talking about your dreams and your bowling average of 150. "I'm surprised you remember that," Danny said. "Geez, I'm getting teased by blondes left and right today. On the bright side, you're not stuck backstage with Paulina. She was going to get the guy playing the preacher ordained, so you'll get married to her for real." Danny raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding, right? 'Cause that's like super illegal." "I told her that much, but she's still convinced she can just bat her eyelashes at you, and you'll be her ghostly knight in shining armor," Star said, pretending to gag. "And you don't want that. You flirted with me a lot during that fake beauty pageant thing," Danny pointed out. "I also got grounded for it," Star said. "My dad is a lawyer, and he said you made the ethical choice picking the one contestant who didn't try to bribe you to pick them, not even playing the best friend card." Star blinked, looking at him. "Wait, what do you mean fake?" Danny explained how Prince Aragon set up the whole beauty pageant so he could have a human trophy wife to rub in people's faces he had and they didn't. Star was relieved. She just dodged a bullet, a feeling Danny was very familiar with, and the two just spent time talking, getting to know each other and rehearsing. Danny learned that Star wanted to get into art school, and the play would look good on her resume. He also saw some of her drawings hanging up on the walls, and Danny would admit they were really good. Danny talked about some of his ghost fights and the occasional team-up he had with superheroes, like the time he got roped into helping stop an armored car robbery with Invisigirl and her dad, Mr. Incredible. So we've got Bomb Voyage and his son La Bamba handed off to the police when Invisigirl rides off on her motorcycle muttering about how she still has time while Mr. Incredible is muttering about déjà vu for some reason, Danny finishes. Star laughed at the story. "Did you find out what she was trying to be on time for the next time you saw her?" "No, but every time I team up with Invisigirl, she's rushing off after saying that she's still got time for what I've got no idea," Danny says with mock exasperation. Just then, the door opened. "Star, I'm home, and you've got incoming." Before Danny could ask what that meant, a little blonde boy ran into the living room and leaped into Star's arms. "Star," he exclaimed happily. "Pierre," Star said, hugging the little boy tight. "How've you been, buddy?" she asked. "I'm good. Maman said you would be in a play like The Lion King," the little boy said happily. Star laughed, shaking her head. "No, not The Lion King. It's called Romeo and Juliet." Danny watched as Pierre pouted the way little kids did when they felt they were right about something, "but The Lion King would be cooler," he said. "Oh, I know," Star agreed, nodding her head, "but after the show, you and I can watch The Lion King as many times as you want. How's that sound?" Pierre cheered. Star kissed him on top of his head, making him laugh. Pierre turned to see Danny. "Who's he?" "Oh, that's Danny," Star answered. "He's in the show with me." Danny waved at Pierre. "Hi, it's nice to meet you." "You too," Pierre said shyly, turning back to his sister. At this point, Danny noticed the time, seeing that it was getting late, and he'd better head home. "I'd better get going." "I'll see you at rehearsals tomorrow." "Sure, I think we've rehearsed enough for one night," Star said. "Besides, I've got much better company." "Ouch," Danny said, pretending to be hurt, putting a hand over his chest. "You got me good," Pierre laughed. Star giggled, rolling her eyes. "He thinks he's funny, but he's not," she faux whispered to Pierre, who laughed. "I think he's funny." "Thank you, Pierre. At least I have one person on my side," Danny said before he headed toward the front door. Outside the living room, he saw a blonde man who was Star's dad and a woman who had to be her mom. Hi, I'm Danny." "Nice to meet you," Mr. Strong said. "Yes, very nice," Mrs. Strong said. Danny smiled nicely before going to the front door and leaving, though, on the way out, he could have sworn he heard Star yell, "Dad," sounding embarrassed. Danny shrugged, going ghost. He flew home. The rehearsals for the play flew by pretty fast and without any hiccups other than the box ghost showing up trying to scare people but being ignored because, by now, everyone and their grandma knew he was less threatening than a mosquito. The only other problem was Valerie caught Paulina trying to force Star into making her Juliet, saying some garbage about A-lister privilege and how only she was going to kiss her ghost boy. Principal Ishiyama was less than pleased with Paulina and her excuses and had the once popular girl suspended. Danny was relieved that things were going so easy and he was having a nice time being in the play. The night of the play, the Fentons were in the front row along with Penny. Sam and Tucker were sitting next to Penny. Tucker, loudly munching on popcorn until Sam elbowed him, "Can you not do that in my ear? It's gross." Tucker shrugged, taking another handful of popcorn. Sam rolled her eyes. "Boys," she muttered, looking over to Penny, who laughed, looking over to Buzz, who was loudly snoring between Danny and Luke. Is everything okay with Buzz?" "He is fine other than the irresponsibility of ignoring his body's need to sleep for 72 hours, Luke answered, Buzz's head resting on his shoulder. Luke poked Buzz's cheek, tipping the blonde-haired Halfa over to Danny. The top of her head was now being used as a pillow. Danny smiled mischievously and stuck a finger in her mouth, getting it wet, then sticking it in her brother's ear, making him yelp in surprise. Waking up, he looked at Danny, annoyed, who smiled innocently. "That smile is not fooling anyone," Buzz said. "Buzz, if you're so tired, why not stay in Bellwood and take a nap?" Henry asked. "And miss the chance to see Danny in tights and talk fancy like Luke?" "No way," Buzz said, yawning. "Besides, I'm fine. It turned out to be nothing anyway." "What, pray tell, turned out to be nothing?" Luke asked. "Also, what do you mean to talk like me?" "Shoo, the play's starting." Meanwhile, in a different area of the theater, a girl with dyed red hair dressed in very expensive designer clothes was eyeing a picture of Danny on the brochure with a grin. "This will be so exciting seeing Estelle and her boyfriend on stage, Maman," the girl said with fake excitement to Star's mom, who had Pierre in her lap. "I agree, Colette," Star's mom agreed as the curtains opened and Shakespeare's most famous tragedy began, not noticing her. Colette smiling evilly. "And what a tragedy for Juliet it will be when I steal her Romeo," she thought wickedly. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and Pokemon Fan 1991 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.